Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to round 4 of the Le Mans Ultimate Championship right here at RaceFace.Pro. And this time, we are out in the deserts of Qatar. Joining me in the box, the Mr. Sandman himself, Cameron de Bastos. Cameron, welcome to Qatar. Welcome to a magnificent circuit and welcome to a night race here in Qatar.
Yeah, good evening, Stevie, and good evening, everybody out there in the virtual grandstands. Yes, Qatar, a new circuit for many of our drivers, and as you mentioned, a nighttime race. So it's quite different compared to what we usually race during the day or night to day or day to night time and then again to day. So it's going to be fun to see how the drivers are going to take it, attack this new circuit, as well as making it a bit challenging for all to see how they make it out there at the very, very end of this race.
And considering this is one of the longest circuits that we get to race on, over 4.5 kilometers long, that you're going to have to deal with. That being said, is a mixture of high-speed straights, where low downforce, low drag tends to pull you through the ranks, but also a lot of tight and technical corners in the first sector to deal with. So drivers are having to learn and play off what they can do to make their cars be the best around a difficult circuit. Once again, we did have the rain last week. This time, however, no rain expected. Pit stops are going to be expected as the track temperature is rather high to deal with. And that means tire degradation is going to start to come into play on this FIA Grade 1 circuit. But let's see, down at qualifying, of how things are going out there. And we go through our points and see who is where in that standing. So quick look to our qualifying. So down to the track as drivers start making their way through. But that being said, Cam, you've got the points and have a bit of an idea for who we need to keep an eye out in this championship, as it's been a little bit of an up and down for some.
And absolutely, Steven. So let's take a look at our Hypercar class first, leading the way and keeping with the trend of first place finishes in the first 3 rounds of our championship is the likes of Chris Stalls, leading the way with 77 points, and right behind him is Delta Negative teammate Jan Kleinans, who's continuously been on the podium but on the second step. And now here comes a bit of a shake-up. Due to the non-start from Bernard Barkhuizen last week, he has dropped from 3rd all the way into 4th. John Verveer is taking up 3rd position with only have a point separating between himself and Bernard Barkhuizen. In 5th, we've got the likes of Brandon Kruger, that first round DNF really hurting his standings. And then finally, in 6th place of our hyperclass, we've got Jaco Kutzer on 22 points. Now let's take a look at our LMGT3 cars. Leading the way is Kyle Oosthuizen after a phenomenal race in the first 3 rounds and really pulling a rabbit out of the hat. He's leading the way with 69 points over the likes of Johan Blichnout, who is in 2nd on 40 points. But the battle across the lower regions of this field is still quite close. Dion Cup, after a quali ban in round 3, is now still in 3rd, but only 10 points behind the likes of Johan Blichnout. But 6 points behind him is Jason Farmer in another BMW, hoping to make the top 3 positions in the class all BMW M4 GT3s. And then finally in 5th, we got our first Aston Martin, unfortunately from Michael van Rooyen, not racing tonight due to real-world commitments there. But sitting in 5th there on a total of 21 points. In 6th, we've got Esteban Pretorius in the lone Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2, who scored his first podium last week around at Spa. In 7th place, we've got Bego Grobbe fighting it out with Ulrich Kleinans. 1 point separating those two, but for 8th between Ulrich Kleinans is Dane Brown. They are tied on 15 points in total. And in 10th, making up our top 10 for the GT3s, is Dennis Gillett on 12 points, but also tied with Jody Sienemann in the position. Then in 12th place, we've got our friendly visitor from across the ocean, Andrei Matechka, in 12th position on 10 points, and then Jeffrey Leroux in 13th position on 8 points. Rounding out our pack is Conrad Martin in 14th, Grant Leclerc in 15th, Gion Bernard in 16th, and then Chris Heineke in 17th. Gio Maton, after a DNF start in first round, makes up 18th position, and then Mike McGear making 19th, all on 0 points from Gio Maton down. And in our top 20 is Gerard van der Vente, rounding up our top 20 there. And then finally, we've got JD Geldenhuys, VT Botha, Hilton Nixon, Arno Kraus, Harry Duplessis, and Nathan Watt, rounding out all our finishes and our champion standings for our GT3 cars for tonight's championship.
So, with that being said, a VIP grandstand packed with drivers and supporters like Sir Jean Fenter, Luke Addison, Stingers Racing, and Delta Negative coming to the party. We are looking for the first time on the board, and that's going to be Chris Stalls with a 139.6. So, really putting up the hammer, but losing out to the likes of his own teammate in the first and second sector. Jean Fiers puts himself on the board with a 142.1. Hoping for a better result tonight. He's going to have to keep in front of young Kleinans. The Delta Negative team are going to be working hard, but they are well aware of the likes of Brandon Kruger and Bernard Barkes, and they're looking to fight it out at the top. However, what I'm curious to see if Pretorius's luck has changed. Now, we did have a chat to him in the previous race saying, look, he had a few mechanical problems during the course of the season that went and threw him down the order, but it seems to have all settled, and he's out in third place at the moment. Carl Oosthuizen, our championship leader in the BMW M4 GT3, now in third place with Beggar Krobler putting himself on the board, and Jeff LaRue puts himself into first place. So a couple of times still out to be done. Hilton Nixon hasn't put a time on the board. Grant Leclerc, Conrad Martin, Nathan Watt, and Bernard Barkhazen yet to go out of pit lane to get themselves sorted. Brandon Kruger trying to put a hammer down, and Kleinans as well, dropping a wheel over the curbs, really battling around the circuit. Now, it is rather bright, so a night race is just when you go out too far past the lights. Over here, it is daylight for drivers to see what they're doing. That being said, the track is very, very hot, and that is something each of the drivers are going to have to contend with. A 140.9 for the likes of Kleinans, not quite close to his teammate with that 139.3 as he came across the line.
And unfortunately, not the results that Kleinans really wanted there, but just shows that Chris Stalls really has worked with that Peugeot and has just made it work for him, and that's something that the other drivers have taken note of and really need to work it in their favor to close the gap to Stalls and not have him run away with the championship, which is currently happening here. But Qatar, as you mentioned, Stephen, it is in the desert, so it is going to be quite hot. The temperatures during the day skyrocketing, but during the nighttime it does tend to fall when it does. But what also happens is the track does tend to cover with dirt, something I hope that is emulated within the sim here, but I don't think it might be. But it's going to be quite interesting to see how the drivers are able to really keep life within these tires until the very end. I mean, just say thinking back to last year's MotoGP circuit, a race that was had here, and as well, this is the two-wheel format. The riders on those bikes really struggled to keep life within those tires, meaning that the tire degradation around Qatar is quite heavy and really do tend to take any form out of them if you push them too hard and too soon.
Well, Esteban Pretorius puts himself into first place, so no problem with his tyres at the moment. 157.5. Carl Oosthuizen finishes up with 157.7. And Jeff LaRue a 157.9. How's that for your top three? And going to it as well, take a look at our GT field. It is all the way down to 5th place that are within a second of one another. Our hypercars, however, there's a little bit more of a difference, with Chris Stalls dominating with a 1.6 second gap. So, I mean, this is always a tough time to be in. And not many drivers are in the hypercars, some not preferring to have the higher aero cars and learning a lot, some preferring to go back to what they know, the GT3 cars. And I know there is a number of drivers out in the grandstand that will also go and say the same thing. They would prefer. I talk about the likes of Luke Addison, races LMU quite a bit, prefers the GT class over the hypercar class, and we'll talk about the differences in that. But I've got to say, I'm interested to see how the tires are going to work out, and that is something Luke's actually bringing up. The Lamborghini, very, very hard on its tires. No matter which sim you've got, ACC, iRacing, all lands up the same. The rears start to take a hammering. The BMWs tend to work rather well. We've seen them all season long and the previous season going and lasting well over time. That being said, we cannot take anything away from the Aston Martins and the Mercedes. They have also proven to be a little bit better to run a longer distance. They can last a little bit longer and they do have the straight line to contend. McLaren's very brutal, but they do tend to be a little bit more finicky on their setup, so you can push it too far the wrong way. But taking a look at our current order, Esteban Pretorius still leads out the field with Blicknote in second place, Carl Oosthuizen down in third with 6 minutes and 20 seconds to go. These drivers have really got to put the hammer down. They've got to try and figure out what is the big plan here. However, our hypercars all still looking to be quite open. Crystals hasn't got much competition, but that can't be said. Take a look at this, Cam. 0.064 between Blicknote and Pretorius, both setting a 157.5, but with the likes of Esteban with a 157.585, Blicknote with a 157.650, apologies. And all of the cars hitting well over 200 kilometers an hour, but Blicknote faster in the second sector than anyone out on the grid. Can he make this work to get first place? Being quite critical into turn one. He puts his hammer down the main straight he goes. Is this going to work out for Blicknote? Does come across a line and moves himself into first place by quite a bit. He is now 0.5 of a second faster than Pretorius. Broke right down to the 157.0 mark. We may see a 156 if they can push that little bit more. If there's no fuel in these cars, they can run completely empty and just a hope and a prayer to get them through to the end.
And absolutely some great pace there from Blicknote there. But as you mentioned, Stephen, regarding the tires and different stuff, the different things between the cars, the BMW is a car that really likes to thrive within the high traction settings within the car itself. So you can really put your foot down, and the tires will not be as much punished compared to the likes of the Lamborghini, the McLaren, as well as the Merc. So where those are, you have to have it at a low TC in order to get the most out of the car. Where the BMW is, you can turn it as much as what you want, and it will absolutely just pocket rocket out of a corner as needed. But Blicknote absolutely putting a flying lap in there. The last two sectors being purple sectors, meaning that is the fastest of all drivers out there, and getting half a tenth compared to his closest competitor, which is that Lamborghini of Pretorius. But Pretorius, unfortunately, not being able to improve his time within the first sector as well as the second sector, almost a full second down compared to the fastest time of Blicknote.
Yeah, having to really dig deep and trying to figure it out in the last 4 minutes. The question is, do you push yourself a little bit harder during qualifying now, or do you rather just go and back it off, get yourself into the pits, talk to the team, settle yourself down, and get ready for the race? Start worrying about what you're going to do for a incredibly long race heading forward. Planning out your pit stops, planning out what you can do. For the hypercars, a lot of engine management needed, for battery management, virtual energy, that has been the Achilles heel to a number of drivers this season and last season. Everyone trying to push a little bit harder, not able to carry that amount of energy through to the end, having to either pit at last minute, and miscalculations coming into play. We've seen that a number of times as well. Jean Fierce improving his lap time. First and second was up. Can he improve over the last? He does get a time on the board, a 140.9. He was actually the fastest through the final sector. Not enough to get his way up ahead of Kleinans with a 140.974. He did a 140.980. So still dug in deep. Unfortunately, just couldn't pull up the pace needed to get on by.
Unfortunately, not able to really work it, but that is something that you mentioned. The drivers in the hypercars really need to figure out how to do. It's a continuous trend with the drivers make a bit of a miscalculation or something in the pit stop where they need to add the fuel goes wrong and they don't add enough. We saw that last week with the likes of Bernard Barkes of Brandon Kruger, only adding a 0.5 of the virtual energy needed compared to what was really needed. So he had to stop twice, which really ruined his chances of going onto that podium. But I mean, we spoke about it, Steve. You said the drivers for me would be I myself as a driver would go, I'll try to get more knowledge of a car, see what needs to be changed, and then make some change, or even do a hard fuel run if you're happy with where you are regarding your position. Get some feedback, see how the car handles over those heavy fuel runs, even if it's 1 or 2 laps, and maybe make a small adjustment on 1 or 2 things there to just get the car dialed in for that early stage in the race, and hoping that it carries forward there on, and then just switch your mind over towards the race. I mean, you can try and push as much as you can, but then also you'll also be getting in your head a lot more by saying, listen, I can go faster, I can go faster. Then you make a mistake and you continue to make a mistake. As Pretorius goes 3/10 faster already to his previous best time, but it does open the door to mistakes, saying I can go faster, meaning that you're putting yourself at risk as well as the car at risk. Yes, we are in a virtual world, but it still takes a bit of a confidence knock when you put the car into a wall.
That's always a concern. Kleinans up into second place. Brandon Kruger, however, trying to fight back to the 140.03 up in Sector 1. Not over the rest of the field, but is on a personal best. Can he try and get into the 139s before the time runs out in the Ferrari 499P? It's going to be a lot of hard work. He's getting very twitchy out there. Not able to get the hammer down as much as he would like. But take a look at Crystals with a 138.9. He has been on a proper chase. Blocknote with a 157.061. 0.2 of a second ahead of Pretorius. Westhuizen 0.6 off him. But Brandon Kruger trying to dig deep at the moment. Lying in third. He's got Jaco Kutzer, his teammate, joining him in fourth place. Can he make it work in his favor with the Ferraris? Unfortunately, not having the easiest time against the Peugeot 908. So Brandon Kruger down in Sector 2. We saw the car getting very twitchy. Unfortunately, that has cost him the run, and I think that has cost him qualifying right at the end. The car just not going and working out underneath him. You can see the driver also just pulling off to the side saying, run's done, not going to bother. But Pretorius, faster in Sector 1, faster in Sector 2. Can he make it work through the final sector? Gets the hammer down the main straight. Pretorius may take pole position on the last. Flat through, all the way across the line, and does. Pretorius gets it in with a 157.049 over the 157.061 of Blichnote. Talk about pulling a rabbit out of the hat. And that was incredibly well done. And I think for Jan Blichnote, the Omnius Gaming Team driver, won't be really mad at that one. Will be kind of scratching his head going, where did you find that point nothing to catch up to me? Macheka now trying to get the hammer down, out in fifth place. So I've got to say, the Chechen driver having a great time out on the circuit. Phenomenal to see him out there. He's dealing with Bego Krobler's time at the moment. Bego set a 158.4. Macheka did a 158.2. As now they're making their way through. Oh, big mistake coming in for Macheka, and that has taken him out of the running. Bego Krobler doing his personal best in 1 and 2 and loses the rear in 3. Just having a major tank. I've got to say, beautiful pirouette. I'll give that a 7 out of 10 for the execution. Couldn't quite pull it off at the end. Down the order, Jason Farmer keeps ahead of Mike McGeer. So the Griffin Sim Racing team keeping ahead of Mike McGeer, who actually builds sim racing products here in South Africa. Trying to keep his hammer down, and unfortunately down in Sector 1. Will be down in Sector 2 by the looks of it. And we've got the likes of Gerard Van der Venter comes across the line. He's in 19th. Not going to be improving this time round as he comes across with a 201.9. So up in the second sector, down in the first sector, but up in the third. Doesn't have enough space to move him through the order. So final car out on circuit is going to be Mike McGeer to come across the line. And then we will be heading into our race to start getting our drivers ready for action here at the beautiful circuit of Qatar. I've got to say, I'm rather excited about this. This track is all about pace. It's about maneuvering. It's also about rhythm. And that's going to be the main thing for all the drivers to think about during the course of this race. That being said, let's go through the starting order. And Cam, I've got to say, I'm really interested to see how this goes, because we have got a rather interesting one. Crystals and Johan Kleinans will start our first second of the Hypercars, followed by Brandon Kruger and Jaco Kutzer in fourth place. Jean Verveers and Bernard Barkhuizen will round out our 6 hypercars. Then we move on to our GT3s, and it's going to be Esteban Pretorius with that late right at the end to get into first place ahead of Jan Blichner. Carl Oosthuizen is in third next to Jeff Leroux. Andre Mataka sits in 5th place with Bego Krobler chasing him down in 6th. Dion Kopp and Jody Suderman is down in 8th. Vietia Buerta and Guillaume Monton down in 10th. Following them is Arno Kraus and Dennis Gillett, along with Chris Heineke out there in the Porsche. Kerry Duplessis, JD Hildenace, Jason Farmer, Mike McGeer, Ulrich Kleinans, Gerard van der Venter, along with Gideon Bernardi, Hilton Nixon, Nathan Watt. Unfortunately, they're in the pit and don't look to be coming out. Grant Leclerc and Conrad Martin as well. So a couple of drivers unable to get out on the grid tonight, but with 20 GT3 cars that are going to be fighting their way through, 6 hypercars, I think we're in for an absolute treat. And all eyes will go to the front as we keep an eye on Chris Stills, who will take out the leading pack. Now, this is half a lap to get the cars to the line, so not much time to warm these tires and brakes up. The Crystals teaming up with the likes of Johan Kleinans, looking to try and get by. Brandon Kruger has had phenomenal starts. Now, we know the Peugeot is not so great on its starts, and he's about to have a whole fleet of cars right on the back of him. So everyone will start lining up. They will get their markers of where they need to be before they can stand on the power. And it's going to be up to our race control to take us to green. We got Jim on the wall, we have got Tim on the cameras, and we got Crystals and Johan Kleinans on the front row for the hypercars. Issa Pretorius and Johan Blichnote for our GT3. Lights are on, lights on, lights off, and we go racing with Crystals already getting drilled out by his teammate Johan Kleinans, trying to give him the run around the outside. Brandon Kruger having a look, Jean Verveers as well, but take a look into the GT3 field as Issa Pretorius guards the inside line. Blichnote trying to go around the outside. Kyle Oosthuizen along with Machaka getting into the fight immediately with Jeff Leroux. Vietia Buerta trying to make his way through, but it's side by side for our leaders in the GT3 class as our hypercars start to pull away. Kyle Oosthuizen, oh, Pretorius goes off circuit, and it's now down into 4th, going into 5th place. Not quite the start he wanted.
No, absolutely not the start that Pretorius was hoping for. Really did well in order to guard that inside line. But so far, another good thing to mention is that Crystal was able to defend that lead for the hyperclass car. We did say the Peugeot hates that low end and not really able to exit, to start well when the lights go green. And the Ferraris have in the previous rounds just gobbled him up and spat him out and leading him to fight back. But now he's already pulled a bit of a gap, so it seems like the Peugeot suits a lot better regarding the circuit, but that doesn't mean it's over just yet. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Right behind him in his mirror, he will be seeing 3 very hungry Ferraris hunting him down. And for the keen-eyed viewers out there, you might have noticed that Bernard Parkhuizen did not take the flag. Something wrong with that car, meaning that car did not start, which is another issue that's going to be counted towards him, which will only further hurt his championship standings. So the gap between himself and Jean Verveers will be bigger, but Brandon Kruger is hoping to close that gap more with him continuing to race and not having another DNS or a DNF compared to our first round at Fiji. But take a look at this. Brandon Kruger already in the slipstream, hoping to hunt down Jan Kleinans. But unfortunately, it looks like Kleinans just able to pull a bit more out of it. I wonder if the Delta Negative team might have made some changes regarding that car in order to just have a bit of a higher top end speed, but it is not over. Brandon Kruger has some late race pace that he likes to pull out of nowhere. He might have tinkered a bit with that car from Omnius Gaming, hoping to get a bit more out of it, same as Delta Negative has done in the previous races. I mean, can't forget last week's race where Chris Tolls has gone and did the entire race without doing a single stop, making a strategy clear that from the get-go it is to lift and coast, save a target fuel amount that needs to be saved in order to avoid a pit stop, and did a phenomenal job and even undercut the entire rest of the field, including his own teammate. But his teammate also fell back following the same strategy.
Well, that's going to be the one to keep an eye out for. Yakakutsa right there in the mix for the Ferraris. But a little bit further down, as we did see Brandon Kruger get it wrong, Yakakutsa looked on the inside, tried to make it work. Is it going to stick? Jaco Kutzer, unfortunately, not able to get on by. But down in our GT3s, it is Carl Oosthuizen leading out the pack. Jeff LaRue now taking a look at Pretorius, chasing him down. Further there is Andre Mataka, along with Vego Krobler onto the back of him. Jody Cinnamon down in 6th place, keeping an eye on this battle as Bego tries for the undercut, tries to go for the up and under. Is it going to work out? Menchaka is going to fight him all the way through, side by side. They continue on, late on the anchors for Menchaka, and he gets it beautifully in. So Bego having to lose that little bit of time. Now we'll be keeping an eye on where can he get the run, but closing up right on the back of him. A driver we don't often get to talk about, and that is Jody Cinnamon, who now looks to see how he can join into the fight. He's got Dion Carp right on the back of him for company as well. So our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th of our GT3s are in for a fight. Further down from that, they've got Maton and Vertier Buerta trying to close up that gap. Down in 10th and 11th, Dennis Gillett in the McLaren 720S Evo, dealing with the 991.2 or the 992.1 GT3 car. Trying to put the hammer down. Chris Heineke dealing with Jason Farmer and Dennis Gillett, who are constantly chasing each other, trying to figure out what is going to be a big game here. Now, that big straight means that there's big opportunities, either to stay in the slipstream, pull yourself along and go for the slingshot, or you can land up going and lifting in that slipstream. Save your bit of fuel, as that can give you an extra lap. We are getting reports down from the pit wall that Blicknote had a game crash, a mechanical failure coming into play, and unfortunately stopped him from getting out onto the circuit. So Blicknote not having a nice time, and unfortunately is out of the race. So not quite where they want to be, and unfortunately for the Blicknote team, they're going to be scratching their heads trying to figure out what can they do to solve the problem. Dion Cup, Jody Sutherland trying to get their way through. Maton and Vietia Buerta now followed through as well. Some good racing out there, Cam, but still a long way to go, as we do see Vietia Buerta out-braking himself here in Qatar. And I think he's going to be nearly visiting the sand dunes like that.
Yeah, a bit of a late breaking there. Really might have spiked that heart rate a little bit there, but it's also quite heartbreaking for Blicknote and the Omnius GT3 team there. With the game crash there. I mean, some great success he experienced the past 2 races. Not what he wanted, as we see a Aston they go run wide in the background there, but not what he wanted following a disastrous start at Fuji, and then some good recovery at Spa as well as Sebring. But just take a look at this. This Mercedes seems to be really putting the hammer down. That mighty front engine car, really closing the gap onto Carl Oosthuizen's BMW. I mean, the gap's gone down already from 4/10 to 3/10, and closing more, and then hard on the brakes, and then it's a long left-hander. We have to be very careful there. I mean, you did mention, Steve, you can play the smart game, and this is what LaRue might need to actually do the smart thing. And if you get into that slipstream, do a bit of lift and coasting. It's the quickest way to save fuel, and over the course of time, the more slipstream you're sitting, the more fuel you're going to save, when you get a lap, 2 laps more compared to your competitor, which might make a difference at the very end if you have to get a shorter stop compared to the longer one that the other drivers in front have to complete.
Well, taking a look, Carl Oosthuizen feeling the pressure. However, our Hypercars, Crystals, Johan Kleinans, Kruger, Verveers and Kutzer have all opened up the gap to one another, and now starting to just focus on what they need to do to see this through to the end. How hard do they really need to push in this 1 hour 20-minute race? But that being said, 1 hour and 20 minutes in a multi-car race means that you're going to have to deal with traffic. As a hypercar and as a GT3, LaRue outbrakes himself, missed the brake marker by 2 meters. You could see how it threw him way out the corner as that Mercedes trying to close up on the gap. Pretorius a little bit further behind, not having an easy time out there. We'll have to keep a very close eye on his race. Dennis Gillett, Jason Farmer, and Thierry Duplessis. We go down to this fight, as it is turning into a bit of a wild one. We do see Dennis slots in behind Jason Farmer, but Duplessis now looks to try and close up the gap. The Griffin Sim Racing team trying to keep ahead, and big problems for Thierry Duplessis. Loses the rear, comes back. Chris Heineke ventures off into oblivion to try and avoid from any contact there, costing him time to Mike McGear, who instantly snaps up the opportunity to get on by and continues on the drive. Chris Heineke having a good time out there, and I've got to say, it's great to see Chris Heineke back out on the track. We definitely go and say, you know, good to see him out there. It's been a bit of a rough time, but we love to see him out and participating.
Now, it's great to see Heineke back out there again with iconic Porsche from the ACC days where I raced against him, and he showed phenomenal pace there. One of the guys I looked up to in order to catch and one day race against, but unfortunately never really got that chance there. But some good avoidance from him there with the likes of the Ferrari slamming on its brakes in order to avoid it slipping a bit more backwards, but with momentum it will carry you no matter how hard you step on the brakes. But LaRue really hunting down this BMW in front of him, hoping to maybe close the gap there and just sit in that, I still say sit in the slipstream, and at the very end when the time strikes you are able to make the move needed as he tries to stick a nose up on the inside, takes a bit of a narrow line compared to Oosthuizen. Now this is all about hoping to get much better drive out of that corner is Oosthuizen trying to achieve. But every time I look at that little delta, it looks like that Merc is just better on the brakes and just better out of corner acceleration. I don't know if that's how the car is set up or it's just how it naturally is around here. But it's quite interesting to see how the Merc just carries more when it comes across or exit out of the corner there.
Well, LaRue is actually faster than Kyle Oosthuizen. Not by much, but definitely is quicker. So he has got the momentum to carry his way through. However, he's not having an easy time. We are getting reports though, Jason Farmer going and checking the soil, making sure it's A-OK. And unfortunately, going into sporting a little bit of damage on that BMW. We'll have the likes of Gerry Duplessis, who we did see spin earlier, now having some company. A little bit further back, Gerard van Venter trying to keep the battle up with Arno Kraus in that Lexus, trying to look up on the inside. The McLaren not going to have an easy time out there as Arno Kraus tries to put the hammer down and utilizes their Lexus brute force power to continue on. But you could see the hypercars have been slicing the way through the field. And I think that would be Brandon Kruger. Was it Brandon? No, that would be the likes of Jaco Kutzer to make his way through. Chris Stolz has made his way through the company, along with Johan Kleinans, Brandon Kruger as well, and John Verveer. So they're starting to realize the bigger work comes in of trying to slot your way through the race. I mean, this is always a tough time indeed.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. And as we were looking at that battle there between the McLaren and I believe the BMW, Lexus, we had reports that Esteban LaRue has made a move over the likes of Jeff LaRue into second position and is now closing the gap again on the likes of Carl Oosthuizen, and he wants to inherit back that first position. But now it's also something that was said by Luke Addison earlier, saying that the Lamborghini will chew through its tires. I don't know if the Pretorius team was able to figure out how to preserve those tires over a longer period, as he has seemed to find quite a bit of pace from the car since Spa. It's going to be interesting to see what he does and if that tire degradation is going to kick in quite early, as it looks like Oosthuizen is just a bit of autopilot mode at this point, just cruising at the front, still keeping up the pace, but maybe looking after his tires a bit more compared to the likes of Pretorius in that Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2.
That's it, and a little bit further down, 6th and 7th in for a fight, and they've got the hypercar class around them. Chris Stolz, Johan Kleinans and Brandon Kruger going around Jody Sederman, and take a look, Brandon Kruger utilizing the traffic to his advantage, closed up on Kleinans at a rate of knots, and now into the slipstream as they pull each other along. Bago Krobler is going to be the next one to see the three hypercars come crashing on by, but just ahead of the pack of hypercars is Majeka, LaRue, Esteban Pretorius, and Kyle Oosthuizen all in tow, and they are fighting for grid position as well, which means it's no easy feat for the hypercars. Crystals ducks to the inside. Kleinans defends the inside away from Brandon Kruger, who's hunting for any opportunity. LaRue's the next one to get past, and Kleinans very close, nearly into the back of the Mercedes. Pretorius moves out wide, allows the hypercars through. Crystals trying to open up the gap, and Kyle Oosthuizen brings it all back together as he gets squished in between Kruger and Kleinans, having a little bit of side-by-side contact there. Oosthuizen with nowhere to go, but used as a wall, as Brandon Kruger did not want to back out of that fight, forced Kleinans to go down the middle where there was room, closing. Could have been devastating for all the drivers, but now Kruger going out wide, losing out a bit of time. Kleinans back into the toe for our hypercars. Absolutely tremendous stuff. But if I was Carl Oosthuizen, that would be a frightening affair to see in my mirrors and to suddenly have against my door.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty sure the spotter would have shouted in the ear saying, cars on both sides, it's hyperclass, be careful, hold your line. But that is also some good racing from the likes of Brandon Kruger, utilizing the slower class traffic in order to create a bit of a barrier between himself and Kleinans to just get that move done and force Kleinans to stay behind that GT3 car and not forcing him away to come back. But it has also closed the gap for stalls to the likes of Kruger and Kleinans. In the early stages, he already had a 2-second gap, and then I started hitting the GT3 pack, and it's all suddenly concertinaed into a very tight field of only covered by a second. I take a look at the energy remaining within the cars. Chris Stoll's managing a proper 60%, 5% more than the likes of Brandon Kruger, and also 3% more than his Delta Negative teammate in the form of Jan Kleinans. But Jean Verveers in the lone Toyota having a bit more percentage left compared to our top three, as the top three are all fighting it out and not having an easy race out there as they try to manage their way through this traffic as well as fighting one another to gain positions.
Well, I do want to talk about Jaco Kutzer because he actually set the fastest lap time of the race thus far with 141.7, and Crystal's only able to do 141.8 during the course of the race thus far. So Kutzer's really put in some good time out there, having a bit of fun. But that being said, taking a look at the tyres, it does look like the hypercars going for a hard rear and a medium front to try and keep the cars in check. So they're hoping alternating the tires a little bit is going to go and move them forward, where our GT3s are all just picking right onto the medium set of tires. They're not going to play around with all the stuff. They are going to focus on what they need to do to finish the course of this race. And that's always the hard part for our drivers, needing to really dig down deep during the course of this race. Now, Carl Oosthuizen and Pretorius have got a bit of a gap open to them. They've got Majeka lying in third. Bago in a little bit of no man's land, but that can't be said for Jody Cinnamon and Dion Kopp. Viertia Buerta also close proximity, side by side, going nose to tail with the likes of Maton on the back of him as well. So 10th and 11th of overall, but 5th and 6th of our GT3s and 7th and 8th of our GT3s still in a close fight. A little bit further down, we've got the likes, unfortunately, this is Jeff LaRue out of the race, and Ulrich Kleinans. So we've got a couple of cars also out of the race. That is a big problem, unfortunately, for those two, and not quite what we want to see. Maybe damage to the cars, going and costing them a bit of time. Dion Kopp keeps the pressure on Jody, trying to figure out where he can get on by. It's going to have to wait yet another lap to try and get the Ferrari 296 around that V8 AMR Aston Martin. Now, bringing back our hypercars, we've got the likes of our Ferrari 499Ps, two different generation of cars. However, Brandon Kruger, actually in the older of the two generations, is fighting it out in second place. He's got Johan Kleinans in the newer generation 499. Easy way to identify them is the number board on the side. Technically the same car, just slight alterations to the body to make it comply with the WEC rules to show it off. But that being said, Brandon Kruger now trying to break the gap from the likes of Kleinans and get onto the back of Chris Stills. Wonder, is this going to be a big gamble for him? He did mention last week, Cam, that he's all about putting the hammer down and deal with everything afterwards, where the likes of Chris Stills is trying to think a little bit further more in the race. We talked about how brute force can be the win or lose effect during the course of these races.
Yeah, I mean, he did mention it last week, as you said, Steven. He is a bit more of an aggressive style, putting the foot down much faster in order to get a great drive out of the corners. But as you said, it does have consequences later. I mean, you might be driving as much, but then also at the same time, you might make some mistakes within your pit box, meaning you have to box again, meaning it's a time loss compared to us. And we saw what happened last week with him, and leading with a fight between himself and John Verveers for the final spot on the podium, leading to a bit of a collision that was deemed a bit of a racing incident by our stewards. And then it's just one of those where if you go too fast, you might not have your mind set on the right one, thinking, okay, I've made a mistake, now I need to make up this mistake, leading to a bit more of incidents. But I think, though, between the likes of Stolz, Kruger, and Kleinhans, Stolz is already on the comms with his team, trying to relay a message saying to Kleinhans, listen, we have our game plan, just make sure to stay within it. We both know they are great at fuel saving, hoping to cut back a bit of a gap regarding that pit stop that needs to occur. I mean, Chris Stolz clearly shows he has gotten the pace over the Ferraris, but already pulling almost we added a 2-second gap earlier, and now already pulling a 1-second gap. But let's take a look at our GT3s here, Steven. This fight has been brewing for quite a while, and it's Pretorius getting closer and closer to that rear bumper of Westhuizen. This this Lamborghini is absolutely flying out there, performing phenomenally in the nighttime conditions, where Westhuizen seems to be a bit on the slower side. But again, is he just managing tires, or is he also on a fuel-saving strat? That's something that can only be answered in the later stages of this race, and we do not know what's going to happen now.
We expect to see pit stops rolling in at the 45-minute mark for these drivers. Kyle Oosthuizen and Pretorius continuing to fight it out with one another. Chaka and Bego Krobler a little bit further down. They also getting close to one another. But a battle that's ongoing. Jody Siderman dealing with Dion Kopp as they fight out for 5th and 6th in position. Continuing to try get any little bit of pace. You can see Jody defensive to the inside line, forcing Dion Kopp to just back off, wait for his opportunity. Kerry Duplessis dealing with Jason Farmer hot on his heels after both landing up with a problem. But I do see JD Kildenace into pit lane with severe damage to that Mercedes, and unfortunately will be hurt out there. Ulrich Kleinhans back out on the track, trying to get himself back into the race and pull himself a little bit further up in the order as we go back to 1st and 2nd of our GT3s. Carl Oosthuizen and Pretorius not backing out of this fight.
No, absolutely nobody's giving an inch of space for someone to pull away or make a gap. It's great to see that Kleinhans is back out on track, hopefully fix whatever was wrong with that Aston Martin. And I urge any of the other drivers to not just throw in the towel just yet. Try and get your team to fix the issue in their car and get it across the line as best as possible. It's always good to see the end of the race from flag to flag. That is what we always strive to have here at RaceFace.Pro. And urging you, I mean, Steven urged me when I was racing, and I'm going to put the word out there for anybody in the virtual grandstand listening. Urge the drivers out there to get back in the car, get the car fixed, and continue racing and see that checkered flag at the very end.
That's it. Once you see the green, you got to see the checkered. Do whatever you can to make sure you see it through. Jody having a fight with Dion, both of them keeping it clean and keeping it together. We have got the fight between Carl Oosthuizen and Pretorius. Chaka and Bego Krobler are now all over the back of one another. Bego Krobler trying to look for the inside on Andre. Can he get it done? The South African against Chechen. And it is going to be Machaka up on the inside. Gets a pass. Clean as a whistle with that straight 6 turbo charge. The inline straight... that's the straight 6. Is it? No, it's an inline 6 turbocharge dealing with the V8 naturally aspirated Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo. But that being said, take a look. Krobler all over the back of the BMW, trying to figure out how can he get on by. Really closing up, following in that rear wing, and now just trying to figure out where can he get the pass done. They've opened up the space, and you can see Machaka already trying to break the slipstream to the pit wall and back. You're only allowed to move across once, and that was his move across, and it wasn't into the braking zone, so it doesn't land up as being his move under braking. Pretorius and Carl Oosthuizen continue to challenge one another, figuring out how far can they go. So this is always a tough race for many of the drivers, but it's still not over as yet, as we do have a couple of drivers unfortunately running into issues out there. LaRue being one of them with a game crash and take him out of the race.
It's a bit of a heartbreaking one. LaRue having some issues the past couple of races with the game crashing and not really working as is something that he's been working behind the scenes, testing it multiple times, and unfortunately just failing to keep the connection going for this race once again. But I mean, Steven, you mentioned earlier the two cars that we currently have here on screen, the BMW M4 GT3. I believe this is the Evo spec, or not yet the Evo spec, compared
the Evo spec,
the old Evo, but compared to the likes of the AMG Mercedes there. The AMG is a 2020 car. It is the Evo spec of that car, so it's a bit of an older one compared to the BMW M4, which is the newer one. I believe 2022 it came out and started racing. Steven might know a bit more about that, as he does love the Beaver Teeth car, even though he does give it a lot of grief. I do know secretly he does love driving it, but it's a bit of it's a bit newer compared to the likes of the Mercedes, meaning it's a bit more advanced, one can say, even though they all fall under the same technical directive as well as rules regarding WEC and IMSA racing. It does have, I believe, a bit more power compared to the Mercedes. And as I say that, I eat my words almost as Belgium tries to send a move on the inside in order to overtake our Chechen Andrei Machechka here. And it's a good clean fight between our two new rivalries, one can say, for third and fourth respectively in our GT3 class.
And you can see Chris Stoll starting to make his way through. He's broken the gap to Brandon Kruger by a good country mile, over 10 seconds. To the likes of Brandon Kruger as Begor Krobler try to look for the inside line. Crystal's now getting, unfortunately, slammed a little bit by Machaka, who says, listen, I've got to drive my way and I've got to drive on my line. It's up to you to get by. A little bit of contact between the two Crystals, trying to get past Machaka. He does do it on the straight. Tried for the corner, a little bit of a ding in the door there, but Begor Krobler backed out immediately, trying to give the Hypercar class a bit more room to play with as they continue on. Baton now dealing with Jody, as we do see the likes of Jean Fiers pulling his way through in the Toyota. Behind them, Vietia Buerta continues in 8th place. Oh, big mistake coming in for Maton. Maton gone into the middle of nowhere, coming out of the kitty litter, but now down in 8th position, and he will have Chris Heineke keeping him company in the Porsche. Now has someone to chase. So that was a big mistake coming in for Maton. Machaka and Krobler continue to fight it out. Here comes Kruger going and getting an easy pass around these two versus the likes of Chris Stalls. However, Begor Krobler kept his nose right onto the back of the BMW, trying to close that gap as much as possible, then drop the hammer and get on by. Machaka will have to keep a very close eye on Begor Krobler, who's fishing for any opportunity to get past and get going.
Yeah, some good fights there, but also good racing from the likes of Begor Krobler there with the hyperclass coming through. He doesn't want to get involved in that and ruin a faster class car race there. Also, I mean, faster class classes do get penalized if it gets reported to the stewards. It's their responsibility to overtake safely, but also it does go both ways. You don't want to get involved with a faster class car. But let's take a look here at Dennis Gillett closing down the gap on Jason Farmer. This is another battle that's going on here lower down the field as our hyperclass are fighting their way through here, meaning those gaps are always fluctuating, going higher or lower. It's all about luck of the draw and where you meet these GT3s along the line. But take a look there in the background, that bright yellow Mercedes there of Geldenhuys. Good to see him back out on track, having the team fix that rear wing and continuing driving as we see a spin here for
Gerard van der Venter going in a little bit sideways. We just came over the shot for him, and unfortunately it looked like the rear just snapping underneath him, and he's having to try and fight his way back into the race. Jason Farmer and Dennis Gillett dives into T1. Dennis closes up coming out of the corner to Jason Farmer, but just doesn't have the run to get on by.
Yeah, that might be something with regards to how the McLaren really likes to do its best braking at the end of the brake cycle, and maybe also a bit of differentiation between the lines that the drivers take within to turn one and being able to get on the power early. McLaren might be able to carry a bit more speed going into turn one compared to the likes of the BMW, but the BMW just seems to rocket away as soon as the rear end stabilizes. As you take a look at the two Aston Martins here, both in different liveries. The factory team... No, wait, this is not factory team. I keep on confusing. The factory team does not race anymore. They race normally through the likes of the Heart of Racing team, which is considered now a factory team for them, as they normally lend the drivers to there in the real world racing. But the two going at hammer and tongs here. Vierter Buerta trying to make a way past Jody Sederman. Unfortunately, Jody losing out the battle with Dion Cup previously. And as I say that, there's Dion Cup in the background, hunting down these two for third, Grobler and Matejka. Grobler making on the inside, Matejka just a bit behind as across the line, giving Bego the position, and unfortunately just losing it out there into turn one. But let's switch around again on the inside. Bego, Grobler, bit of a good close battling going on. They're running a bit to the apex there, and then again switching on to the other side. These two have given us some great fights so far tonight, Stephen.
And both getting a little bit unstable. The BMW shaking all over as they tried getting back over the curb. But however, Bego, Grobler and Matejka continue to fight it on. Dylan Kopp slowly closing that gap up by a country mile, has now turned this duo into a trio, as the Ferrari 296 is all over the back of Andre at the moment, who's battling to keep that car in check. You could see almost like the traction control starting to bite and becoming a little bit more irritating, going and forcing him to get a bit of grip where he doesn't want it to be, and starts to get that snap underneath him. Defensive inside line to try and force the likes of Dion Kopp out, does compromise his pace on the exit, but he does pull himself through. A very tight and technical section at the top of the circuit they have to deal with. But Bego Grobler now starting to go and break that toe a little bit more, nearly a second to the likes of Dion Kopp and likes of Matejka, who continue to keep each other in very rough stead. Dion Kopp visiting the sand a little bit, going a little bit wide, and so does the likes of Andre, who snaps right across to the right-hand side of the circuit, hoping that he can defend and fight Dion Kopp just a little bit more. And behind them, we've got Jody Sederman and Vierter Buerta. They are also in a fight of their own. So our GT3s, once again, putting on a phenomenal show. Take a look at Andre, though, deep on the inside, forcing Dion Kopp to follow him through. Does come back to the original racing line. However, Dion Kopp spies for the inside. He decides rather not to go for it. And this, once again, forcing Bego Grobler to have a little bit more room to play with, but not by much. That is most for certain. But the question comes in. We spoke about the 45-minute mark for the pit stops to query come into play. Now, we have seen it gone and turn drivers flat on their heads before. Are we going to see it again here tonight around Qatar? As this is a brand new circuit for many of the drivers, having to purchase the latest of the DLCs here in Le Mans Ultimate to be able to race it on. And once again, it's a circuit that's not often raced. This is a circuit that a lot of the drivers coming in from Assetto Corsa Competizione have never run across. Jody Sederman and the likes of Vierter Buerta, the two Aston Martins, continuing their chase with one another. Mouton and Thierry Duplessis continue on their battle. However, we still have, unfortunately, a couple of drivers out of the race. Jeff LaRue, Gideon Bernardi, Johan Bluchnote, Hilton Nixon, Grant McClure, Conrad Martin, Nathan Watson, Bernard Barkhuizen, unfortunately out of the race and won't be seeing the checkered flag. Jason Farmer keeping Dennis Gillett at bay, and we do see a little bit in the back. JD Hildenace starting to make his way through. He's dealing with the hypercars, coming and making life a little bit more interesting out there as we head back up to the the big battle, third and fourth, chasing each other down, and fifth place of Dion Kopp around the outside, as Dion trying to make it work. Chaka throws him out to the fringes of the circuit. However, the Ferrari had a good run out of the corner, a quick left to right, trying to find the grip. In through the slipstream he goes, yet again, going to try get the pass done and dusted, leans to the left-hand side, cuts around, trying to see if he can defend it past, goes for the up and under. Will it work this time? However, Andre once again tries to defend, but it is Dion Kopp, slams it across the nose on Matejka, gets it done and dusted, forcing the pass to happen no matter what. It was either going to be contact or it was going to be lift for the likes of Machaka, and Dion Kopp forcing that pass to happen. Not quite the nicest way of doing it, but it got it working nonetheless.
Yeah, great driving there and a great move for the up and under from Dion Kopp. They're really making a bit of a habit to make it from the back of the pack and then fighting for higher up into that podium positions. Last week, fighting all the way from the back of the GT3s to finish 6th, I believe, in the GT3 field in a wet-soaked Spa-Francorchamps race, and really making it showing that the Ferrari is a car that shouldn't be swept under the rug just yet. But I do see we have some Aston lovers out there in the virtual grandstand with Armour saying, why Aston not on top? Just because it is not fully fledged or researched just yet by our drivers, with many of the drivers driving the Aston, choosing it as a new car and being new to the season here. But now with Andrei Boteshka dispatched from his side on Dion Kopp, puts his sight on the likes of Bego Hrobla, who already pulled almost a second gap over these two as they were fighting and squabbling away and hoping to make a move there. But already Dion Kopp pulling almost a second, pulling half a second over the likes of Mateshka, really showing that the tires on that BMW might be starting to go from all the defending they did against Bego Hrobla.
That's it. And Dion Kopp has opened up the gap quite a bit, getting a little bit closer to Bego Hrobla on the way through. So, that being said, we've now hit the 45-minute mark, and I don't see cars in pit lane, and it makes me wonder how things are going. Well, for our hypercars, Crystals lies on 29% remaining on the energy. He's trying to carry it through. Brandon Kruger on 19% of virtual energy left, along with Johan Kleinans. Likes of Jean Fiers out there in the Toyota is on 31, and Kutzer lies with 27 left on the virtual battery that the drivers are going to have to pit, get themselves sorted, and get going to continue on the race. I mean, this is always a tough time for the hypercar class, and it's one of our it's difficult in a way. If you like racing, but you like thinking about your race, a hypercar is brilliant. It's got great aero, it's got great top end, and it gives you a unique challenge. If you're up to just putting your foot down and see where the race goes, and if the red light comes on, that means you need fuel. That's going to be the LMP2s and the GT3s. Also, our GT4s are going to be coming in very soon, and LMP3s as well, as we gain the European LMS coming into the fray. So it's good to see quite a few different classes coming into the sim and drivers willing to try out each of the different classes. However, no LMP2s racing this time around. Hopefully for next season we'll see them out there, but a lot of GT3s that have been really in hard work of development and trying to make them work. Jody Cinnamon up into 6th place. Viertia Buerta losing out that little bit of time, but the battle for 3rd is on. Dion Kopp and Bego Hrobla side by side. Now Dion Kopp, all the way from Monday Night Racing, puts his nose past, gets the rear up against Bego Hrobla. Phenomenal run out the outside of the final corner. Now Bego Hrobla trying to follow him through, ducks to the inside. Bego trying to keep himself going. A little bit of side-by-side contact there. They do have Crystals trying to come on by. Bego giving a little bit of a nudge to Dion Kopp as well. The two of them just going and playing a little bit of ping pong with one another. Dion Kopp and Bego Hrobla going elbow to elbow, but not very neat between both drivers. I have to say, the argy-bargy is a little bit much and can lend in massive tears for both drivers. Hopefully, red mist will start to fade a little bit and the drivers can get back to racing instead of bumper cars damaging these carbon fiber cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do rubbing is racing, but it does get to the point where it surpasses the point of the set out rule of what is actually allowed within rubbing is racing. A red mist, you mentioned, Stephen, is literally when the drivers get so fixated on a target in front of them and they get mad, and it's like a red veil that just falls over the driver's visor, and all they see is that target and they want to get that position back. it can lead to heartbreak. It has ruined races multiple times. It has ruined my very own races. It's something that the drivers need to take into consideration and avoid. I mean, 42 minutes still left within this race. You don't want to be the car that sits at the end of the race in the pit lane, smashed to pieces because you couldn't control your very own anger when you go out on that track. It's something drivers need to do, as well as the crew chiefs need to tell them in their ears. Turn it down. We will get them back. It's not the final race of the season yet. We're here for the long run, not for a short sprint race.
Well, as fuel starts to come down, no one in the GT3 class able to beat the lap time set by Jeff Leroux, 158.5. However, our Hypercars still leads out with Chris Stills with a 141.4 as the fastest lap time of the race. He's got Brandon Kruger in second place, Johan Kleinans running in third, and the times between them, Kleinans just not able to gain that little bit of time on Brandon Kruger. However, we do know Brandon Kruger is starting to run a little bit low on the virtual energy. He's gonna do his pit stop about a lap earlier, and I don't think he'll be pushing his way through. Dion Cup and Bego Krobler keeping close to one another as they once again looking to revitalize that fight for third place. And Pretorius lies in second behind our championship leader, Carl Oosthuizen. These two, I suspect, are going to come down to the pit stop being the change through. Jason Farmer getting ahead of Harry Duplessis as they continue on the drive. The Griffin Sim Racing team having their own inner fight between them. Good to see that we got the drivers fighting out there, and the Griffin Sim Racing team once again getting their biggest supporter, Antonio Gamble, to come in and say good luck to the Griffin Sim Racing team. But I do suspect a little bit of favoritism coming into play with the likes of Jason Farmer. I think there's a bit of favoritism there. I would suspect that there's a fan club difference there. I wonder why, but it's good to see they are having a bit of fun. But that being said, we do have one of our drivers, Leroux, saying unfortunately it's a disconnect that has taken him right out of the race and causing a bit of time into a bit of an issue. So not an easy run for him at all. And once again, absolute heartache out there. Ulrich Kleinans in for the fight. He's got the leaders of the GT3 closing up on him. You can see the damage to that Aston Martin as he's trying to close up to Mike McGear on his way through. He lies in 16th position, Mike McGear in 15th, a little further up the road. But Carl Oosthuizen has to try and get this pass done very, very quickly. Otherwise, he is going to be dealing with the likes of Pretorius on the back of him. However, big talking point for third place. This is Dion Karp in third, Mataka in fourth, and fifth place is Bego Krobler. So Krobler made a mistake somewhere and cost himself a bit of time.
I wonder if he tried to get out the way of a Hypercar. We did see it Toyota. They might have gone out the way of a Fierce. They unfortunately just made a bit of a mistake and ran wide, needing to recover the car, which opened the door for Mateshka to come through and then just not able to put it or somehow spun the car in one of the corners there. It is a very flat surface regarding a flat track. There's no really much embankments in order to help, or cambers to help the corners make it easy. It's a very flat one, and I actually made a comment towards one of the other drivers earlier this week saying I despise flat surface tracks. It's not fun. It's just like driving on the highway without anywhere to go. But it seems to be working for some drivers, but also not. And it also makes it quite easier to spin out and unfortunately lose the rear of the car. And I think that's what might have happened with the likes of Bego Krobler there. But let's take a look here. Harry Duplessis, Jason Farmer, some in-team rivalry going on here with Antonio Gamble saying, no, Stephen, I'm completely neutral. We all say we're neutral until our favorite driver starts winning. And that's going to be something that the fan club needs to decide who they're going to back here, Farmer or Harry Duplessis.
Had a bit of a cough. Oh, I shouldn't have coughed. Harry Duplessis goes off into oblivion. Oh, right. Bad to have a cough right there and then. As
Antonio, I'm sending you Stevens.
Not agree with that answer.
No, absolutely, Antonio. I'm going to send you Steven's personal email address so you can shout at him for causing that cough and spin there for the likes of Harry Duplessis. Talk about commentator's curse, the first one of the season, and hopefully not the last of many, as that's always going to happen. But unfortunately, a bit of a spin there for Harry Duplessis. But let's take a look at our Aston on Aston battle. Jody Sierman, Wietse Botha. These two have been following one another for the last couple of laps. hoping to find a kink in the armor of Seremon is Buerta, but the Aston seems to be quite bulletproof against the car of its own making. As we take a look at who's in the pits here, Brandon Kruger
in pit lane, getting some
another
work done.
disconnect. Oh wait, no, behind the pit wall there. Didn't see him there.
It was going and getting himself back out there again. So
scheduled pit stop. I believe that's a scheduled pit stop. Yes. So I was wondering how was Stolz able to pull a 10% more energy out of that Peugeot compared to the likes of Brandon Kruger. But then we have to keep in mind, he is the driver that said he will go hammer and tongs until the very end, and then whatever comes his way, he will deal with it. But that does not look he gained enough fuel in that stop. Only 6% on our systems. I wonder if he made a mistake again within setting the fuel target for the car that needs to be refueled.
I think they still need to update that, and there it is, 79.
There we
so
go,
he has come across and fixed it up. So 79, that's going to carry him through to the end of the race. And drivers trying to get the hammer down for the running through. I've got to say, just once again, sorry for the timing. That was terrible. Machaka down into 9th place. Let's talk about our GD3s. However, we're starting to see some big changes coming into play. The question comes in of the drivers that have stopped. Machaka has done his pit stop in the top 10. Everyone else around them, well, not much, except for the likes of Duplessis and Maton. They dived into the pits. Gildenace, McGeer, Leclerc, Martin, and what, unfortunately, non-starters, along with likes of Van Venter, having that crash a little bit earlier on, takes him out of the running. Still, good to see drivers focusing on what they can do here and now, but Majaka needs to clear Jason Farmer to try and bring himself a little bit closer. He's got the likes of Chris Heineke just up the road from him, Vietia Buerta and Jody Cinnamon, who are also in tow with one another. So everyone hoping for that little bit of a push, that little bit more drive. Carl Oosthuizen breaks the gap to the likes of Pretorius as it stands, but everyone still keeps a good drive. Let's run through our running order, as it's Chris Stolz who leads out the pack. Johan Kleinans in second place of our hypercars, with Jean Verveers in the Toyota, dives up on the inside of the Lexus. He holds third place. Brandon Kruger down in fourth, with Jaco Kutzer in the pit lane, now getting himself sorted out for the routine stop. Carl Oosthuizen, Esam Pretorius run second and third, or run first and second. Dion Kapp and Bego Krobler run third and fourth. Jody Cinnamon along with Vietia Buerta on the back of him. Chris Heineke and Jason Farmer run down in 7th and 8th. Ninth place is Machaka in pit lane again. Now,
yeah, so I was about to reach towards that, Stephen, when we noticed him drop down from 4th all the way to 9th. I did see something pop up on our timing tower here quickly saying penalty for Mateshka. So I wonder if he might have gotten too many penalty points leading to a drive-through being served. Yep, this is a drive-through. He has to do it in order, otherwise it will accumulate to a larger penalty or even a disqualification. So track limits excursions too many times, leading to a slap on the wrist from the steward saying that's enough, you have to serve it. You're driving too recklessly, you didn't keep it between the white lines, time for a drive-through, slow it down.
And this is a driver that was fighting out for second and third place, now down to 11th position. Jody and Vietia continue to keep each other busy and will continue to fight through the course, as it does look like Jody has got a little bit more run over Vietia Buerta at the moment. Brandon Kruger up into fourth. He gets ahead of Jaco Kutze. He's trying to get a little bit closer to Jean Feers, Johan Kleinans, and Chris Stolz as they continue on their drive. Energy remaining, however, Stolz on 9%, Kleinans on 6%, for Feers on 14%, and Kruger and Kutzer sitting with 70 and racing till the very end. It's going to be hard work for both Delta negative drivers and Jean Feers out there in third place for the Trail Bullets team, looking to carry the momentum through. And good to see the Trail Bullets team. We actually got to have a chat to them, the likes of Jan getting a win in the GT3s last weekend. Last week he had a bit of fun in the ACC, and said the momentum for the Trail Bullets team is just the excitement, the going, just really putting on and really elevating the game from their side in the different sims, trying to go for those wins. Well, you can see that they are really still keeping in for the fight and taking rather unique cars. However, Johan Kleinans does his best Sector 3 time, and so does Chris Heineke, improving their Sector 3 time. So good to see still some improvements coming out of the drivers as they continue on the race, but it does look to be rather settled other than Jody and Vietia, who are the closest currently on circuit to one another. Never mind, Vietia Buerta misses out the track completely. I know that the hypercars can be rather daunting, but you don't have to visit the countryside in the process. Maybe having Paul Fenter talking in the ear went and threw Morphy's game.
Maybe. I think he might have just been pulling you to his side to look at the beauty that is that Ferrari 409P, even though I don't really like the car. It looks like a squished bug from behind, even though it's with a straight line brake lights. But that's just me. Everybody has a disliking car. I still like my Toyotas. But let's take a look here at our lead battle for our GT3s. Esteban Pretorius still hunting down the likes of Carl Oosthuizen. These two have been fighting for over 30 minutes almost, ever since Esteban clawed his way back from 5th back into 2nd. Really showing he does have some pace in order to lead it. It's just needing to find the move in order to, and sticking it. But in the past couple of minutes, he hasn't really been able to get close to that rear end of that BMW. It looks like Oosthuizen has opened up the taps of that BMW, saying, listen, if you want it, you're going to have to fight for it. We did see him fight it out at Sebring 2 weeks ago with the likes of Blichner. Blichner now unfortunately having a game issue and not making it back onto the track. Now it's between these two, the Lamborghini versus the BMW. Who's going to be on top at the end of the race? I don't know. It's up in the air at this point in time, as he still need to do some pit stops in order to see really where everybody shuffles out within this pack.
Was a tough time. 0.3 of a second difference for the best lap time between the BMWs. Now quick flash lights coming in, trying to let Mike McGear know, listen, we're coming through, best mind out of the way. Chris Stolz in the hypercars also getting onto the back and around Pretorius, will now also try and figure out his way by. So great to see the drivers still trying to push themselves this little bit harder as Mike McGear moves out of the way, allows Carl Oosthuizen to come through. Chris Stolz also cleaned on by to continue on the drive. So everyone hoping to get the hammer down. Macheka ahead of Jason Farmer, who dives into pit lane. Jody and Vietia still continue to fight it out as they are the closest of our GT3 field. 20 GT3 started and 16 are still running here tonight. It does show you the attrition rate, unfortunately, not quite where everyone wants it to be. However, it does show how difficult the circuit can be as Vietia dives on the inside of Jody and lines it up, gets it done, runs out a little bit wide. Jody now tucks in the toe behind him and looking to try and figure out where he can go. The logistical nightmare racing team of Vietia Buerta keeps Jody Cinnamon at bay. But for how long is going to be the question, because now Vietia has to deal with the pressure. Take a look, Cup and Krobler into the pits and getting their pit stops done and dusted. So it means Vietia and Jody will get on by without too much of a problem. Chris Stolz coming out of pit lane, and next to him we can see Dion Cup as they exiting pit lane together. Johan Kleinans in the pit box as well. The question comes in, where is Brandon Kruger? Unfortunately, a little too far back to try and capitalize on this moment as Kleinans starts to get the car rolling and looking to exit ahead of Brandon Kruger and hold that third place. Only by a fraction by the end of it, because here comes Kruger on the main straight as Kleinans trying to get himself going, and Kruger snatches third place away as he was able to carry that little bit more momentum in his favor, and now needs to keep the hammer down.
Yeah, some great strategy there from the Omnius Gaming hypercar of Brandon Kruger there, but it is also a battle between the pit stops, a 16-second gap between Stolz and Kruger, with Fafia still needing to pit, being able to go one lap extra compared to his other hypercar cars there. So really something that still needs to be figured out there, with Jaku Kutzer almost over a minute behind the closest car, which is Kleinans. Now this is a battle between third and fourth. Brandon Kruger having a bit more fuel compared compared to the likes of Stalls and Kleinhaus. Normally, I would be a bit concerned about this as we see Esteban Pretorius diving into the pits and Oosthuizen again pulling his iconic move of going 1 lap earlier or longer compared to his closest rival. But Chris Stalls having less virtual energy compared to the likes of the other hyperclass cars is something that might peak a bit of stress within myself or anybody supporting this Peugeot, but it's also something that the Peugeot is very good on fuel. Crystal's knowing how to manage that system as well as the battery deployment unit within this Peugeot, which has proven to be quite successful for him without this season. But now it's also taking a look at our GT3s. Who is going to make what? As we see a Aston Martin line forming at pit entry and Esteban Pretorius leaving the pits, still holding on to second, and Buerta and Sereman going into box now. So that's third and fourth respectively going into the pits, but Dion Cup boxing a lap earlier, taking this position away from the likes of Buerta and Sereman. But also, will he take the move over Pretorius? No, close, 1 second, 2 seconds, or 1.2 second, less than a second. Oh, gets the undercut perfectly executed on Pretorius and snatches that second position away from Esteban in that Lamborghini, and now sets his sights on hunting down Oosthuizen, who is currently, I believe, on an in lap in order to do his pit stop.
Well, Dion Karp is going to be giving it absolutely everything. Another driver that's moving through is going to be the likes of Bego Krobler as he moves up into fourth place ahead of Viator Buerta and Jody. Chris Heineke in the box, Dennis Gillett in the box, Arno Kraus and Macheka continue their fight as the Lexus try to power on through. Macheka deep on the inside will have the run on Arno Kraus. Can he make it work into turn one? He does, as they get round the likes of Jody coming out of pit lane and now continuing on the drive. So Checker on the climb back into the top five. He's going to try and have to close up the gap to Bego Krobler. 22 seconds up the road. Carl Oosthuizen in the box. Here comes Dion Karp. How far can he go? How long can he push as Dion Karp needs to try and take this first place? He's only been able to stand on the top spot once last season, not any time during the course of this season. It might be a change now for it to work out in his favor. John Fears of the Hypercar pulls into the pits. Chris Stalls takes over first. Brandon Kruger will be jumping into that second place and hoping to close up the gap as well. So this is going to be an interesting time. With 25 minutes to go, it's all on the line for these drivers to push themselves just a little bit more. Kleinhans gets past for Fears. Kutzer looks to try and get past the likes of Jean for Fears. Unfortunately, he does look to be a little bit far back, and the Toyota will manage to hold forth on the exit.
Yeah, and take a look at our GT3s. Dion Karp not able to get the jump over the likes of Oosthuizen, having a phenomenal in-lap is Oosthuizen again. But Dion Karp already closed that gap down to almost about 8 seconds. But just means and showcases either Pretorius had quite a bad stop as he was relatively ahead over the likes of Cup, about 9 seconds when he was entering into the pits. I believe Pretorius might have had a bit of a longer stop, might have changed some tires in order to preserve something, but hoping to mount a late stage attack. But Oosthuizen running away with this GT3 race so far, dominating from lap 1 after taking that position from the likes of Pretorius, and now it's a battle between himself and Dion Karp. But Dion Karp already ignoring that mirror, hoping to close the gap to Oosthuizen and getting that victory that he so desperately wants within the season here on season 2 for our LMU Championship.
Arno Kraus into pit lane as well. We'll be dropping down the order. And now that our pit stops have all come into play, it is Crystals out in first place for the Hypercars behind Chris Heineke as he dives for turn 1. Running second of our Hypercars in the Ferrari 499P is Brandon Kruger as he puts the hammer down. I do think the engine's starting to take a little bit of strain there. Brandon Kruger will have to keep an eye on temperatures as Jan Kleinhans runs in third. John Verveers runs in fourth, and Jaco Kutzer holds out in fifth. For our GT3s, it is Carl Oosthuizen dealing with Dion Karp at the moment. 8 seconds back in second place, and Esteban Pretorius currently running in third, 2.4 seconds back of Dion Karp. Bego Krobler lies in fourth place with Andre Mataka down in Andre Mateshka.
Mateshka.
See, one day I'll get it. Mateshka.
It's European.
Lying in 5th place. 6th is Jody Cinnamon, along with Vietia Buerta. Chris Heineke in 8th. 9th is Mouton, along with Dennis Gillett, rounding out our top 10. But is it going to be a bit interesting? And for the eagle eyes starting to take a look, we did see either a lockup, but I'm not sure. That was a corner exit, little bit of smoke that came off the rear. And
Might be a bit of wheel
every so
spin.
often it's still sitting there. I've got a funny feeling this car has been pushed a little too hard into the rev range and has felt a little bit of strain on it as well. Just trying to double check there, but it seems to be every so often very intermittent on the car. We do know that LMU does have engine damage that can be occurred during the course of a race and can lead to some big failures. Yeah, there it is. It shows straight out the back of that 499, and something we haven't seen throughout the RaceFace LMU Championship Season 1 and Season 2. Brandon Kruger is running with a little bit of engine strain on the car, and I don't think he's aware of it.
No, that's where his third spot would be very great. Let's quickly, this gap between Kleinans and Kruger is going down phenomenally fast, and as I said, that it spikes up again. But the gap has gone down quite significantly on that front straight, and it wasn't due to any slipstream. It might be a bit of traffic getting in the way, but Brandon Kruger might have damaged that gearbox, and we might be seeing a mechanical failure for the first time. Knock on wood, and I hope I don't do commentator's curse, because then I will definitely be sleeping in the dog box on that Ferrari 409P, which is something that we do not really see in the real world, but we might be able to see in the virtual world.
It does happen where you get to see it, so it's something that does come about. And engine damage is when you start pushing the revs a little bit too high, and it takes
Or
in a bit
shift
of an
down
impact.
too, or shift down a bit, and gearbox might be giving a bit of an issue.
So it's definitely something to keep an eye out on the 499, and does lead on to a little bit of a issue for the car. However, Brandon Kruger is going to drive through it. He's going to do the usual stunt that we all love to do. I know my car, and I will drive it. Whether it goes bang or whether it goes, it might see the end, it might not. We're about to find out, as we do see Dion Karp hoping that he doesn't run into any issues, as the two Italian cars, the Raging Bull of Esteban Pretorius in that Lamborghini, trying to get past the Ferrari 499P, getting past the 296, as we've got Dion Karp in second place, Esteban Pretorius chasing him down on a new set of rubbers, hoping to try and keep the pressure on. Now, Cup is a little bit older on that set of tires and will be fighting the understeer starting to creep in as Pretorius lines up around the outside. Dion Cup keeps the pressure on, a little bit of door-to-door with one another, all clear on the run. But as these two brawl it out, they are slowly but surely bringing Bego Hrobla back into contention, who will be on the major climb through. Dion Cup got some great drive heading into the final sector over Pretorius, but take a look. That is Brandon Kruger sorry, not Brandon Kruger. That would be the likes of Jaco Kutza gaining a bit of time on them. That can possibly change how this race is going to go. So, quick flash of lights for Pretorius as he's trying to signal that he wants to get on by. Dion Cup says, not going to happen, buddy. He goes for a defensive inside line, and here comes a Hypercar, puts him right offline, and it is going to be a sweep under for the likes of Dion Cup. Runs right to the fringes, forces Pretorius to take the outside line. Pretorius has got the advantage on the inside. Can he make it stick side by side? These two go and are giving each other just enough room. And well done to Dion Cup there to hold on to that second. But now Pretorius is coming back fighting.
Some great fighting between the two Italian manufacturers there, but also something that needs to be mindful. There's still about 18 minutes left within the race. But speaking of 18 minutes left, Steve, I'm keeping an eye over the likes of this gap between Kleinans and Kruger. and that gap keeps on going lower and lower, with 1 point Kruger being almost 20 seconds behind the likes of Stalls. I am curious to see what is going on within that Ferrari, and I wish we had the comms available to know what is being said over that radio, to know what strategy was going on, and if the team even noticed that something isn't clicking well within that 49P and saying, listen, we're having some issues here, manage your pace and be careful what you do with that car and also where you shift with that engine.
Well, they always say it does its best when it's on its last legs, and that is what happens with grenade motors, as we do see the likes of Crystals getting caught into a bit of traffic as Pretorius gives him a bit of room to get on by, and so does Dion Karp, nearly turning into the side of Crystals. He runs out wide. Here comes Pretorius with the run, trying to make up some time. Dion Karp got so tunnel vision, he didn't see the likes of Crystals right there in his door, and now Pretorius once again gets into the toe, tries to pull himself along. Down the back straight they go. We do see a little bit in the background of BMWs and Honor Kraus. Ooh, side-to-side contact again. Dion Karp trying to force Pretorius to move a little bit. Not a very good move, might I add. We saw that a little bit earlier in the race with Bego Hrobla, but it is going to be Pretorius yet again to try and fight it out with Dion Karp. Looks to try get the up and under. He's stuck on the outside, not going to work out as he tries to make it work in through the rear. A little bit of bump draft to get it working out. Round the outside, puts the hammer down. Underneath he goes. Pretorius has got the advantage, slots in, gets past Dion Karp, who immediately comes back fighting. Side by side, they both go into the left-hander. Long onto the gas, and Dion Karp has lost it. Karp has lost it, trying to rejoin, and right in front of the Hypercars and GT3. However, Pretorius was the ultimate victor in that one. Dion Karp just not having the rears to keep the momentum, unfortunately snapping out last minute, and now needs to try and make up some ground. He still holds third place with 8 seconds back. Bego Hrobla with 15.5 minutes left to go in this race.
Absolutely heartbreaking for Dion Karp. They both gave us some great moments there, side-by-side action for multiple times, but unfortunately the traction control just kicking in over the likes, well, in Dion Karp's car, and the Ferrari not really agreeing with what he did with that throttle and lighting up those rears. And I do know that those rears will be screaming in agony, saying, listen, give us a second to breathe, you are cooking us here, we are not as fresh as the other car's tires. And now it needs to just cool it down, back it down a little bit, and bring some life into those tires again. As take a look here at Jan Kleinhans hunting down the likes of Brandon Kruger. From the last time I saw was a 7-second gap into a 4.5 seconds now. This is either due to traffic playing a factor and messing up Brandon Kruger's run, as we saw him a bit there as the cars were leaving the camera shot there. But now it's again is almost sub 4 seconds there. This car is not a happy camper. It has overcooked the pasta, I believe, in that engine, and is now not really perfect. It's past the point of al dente, and the car is not being very happy.
And it's perfect for a mac and cheese. That's all I could say. Carl Risthazen now trying to keep it all together. He leads out the GT3 field. Doesn't want to lose out too much time. Does see Brandon Kruger come on by. Kleinhans did have the fastest lap of the race with a 141.4, but that was only just beaten by Crystals doing a 140.7 on that last lap. However, this Ferrari is starting to choke and not having an easy time out there. And Brandon Kruger throwing the car into the corners, just trying to carry as much momentum through the corners as possible to try and keep ahead of Johan Kleinhans, who's put the hammer down now and sees an ailing Ferrari ahead of him and looking to try get on by. Remember, 2 different generations of cars out on the circuit, and we're getting to see these two fight it out for the run. Brandon Kruger's last lap time, a 141.7, while Johan Kleinhans' last lap time was a 141.4. They still have a little bit more room to play with. Dennis Gillett next to have Johan Kleinhans come on by. This is going to provide a little bit of breathing room for Brandon Kruger to open up that gap of 3.4 seconds as it hammers down the order. Kruger trying to close up to Stills has now broken down into the sitting in 19th heading into 20 seconds. So it's that constant back and forth. But I think the concern is now looking in that rearview mirror and seeing a Ferrari 499P closing at a rate of not. The Delta negative is in for the chase here. However, I do want to also talk about what our GT3s look like. Kyle Oosthuizen leads out the race by 7 seconds, but doesn't hold the fastest lap time. That's actually held on by Esteban Pistorius with a 158.3, and Dion Cup running in third place at the moment, running the same lap times as our leader.
Yeah, some good pace there from Pistorius there, and it looks like the gap, the last time I checked, was already down by a second between Pistorius and Oosthuizen, really hoping that fresh tires come kicking in again, but the focus point for now, I looked at this gap between Brandon Kruger and Jan Kleinans as they went through the final corner down the front stretch there. A 0.4 second gap got down to 0.0 when they entered the braking point. That just shows that somewhere the top end is not functioning within the factory colored Ferrari, which is this one currently on screen, compared to the customer Ferrari, which is the AF Corsa, the yellow Ferrari driven by Jan Kleinans. It's a bit of a battle between the two. Last lap time, a 0.972 difference between the two cars, meaning that Brandon Kruger was a bit slower compared to the likes of Jan Kleinans. But again, traffic comes into a bit of an effect here on the corner exit. Again, a puff of smoke from that car. Not really happy and is not bottoming out on that curbs. Definitely not liking that lower end rev range within that car as he has to accelerate out of those corners.
I mean, this is always exciting racing, and honestly, the drivers needing to really think what they need to do to make it work. I mean, this is all just taking a look at the racing and saying, hey, what are we doing here? How can we make it work and see how it goes? A lot of people have actually reported about engine damages coming into the sim, especially if you start pushing it a little bit too hard, getting the rev ranges wrong, or landing up straining the motor, getting too hot during the course of the race by closing ducts. So that seems to be another factor that comes into play. We did talk about the heat here at Qatar. Not an easy thing to deal with, and we're starting to see who's the drivers that are feeling it on the way through. Kylian Bernardi, unfortunately, in pit lane and looks to be one of our retirees, along with likes of Jeff LaRue. Ulrich Kleinans, the last of our runners, down in 15th position of our GT3's 20th overall, continues to try and close up the gap to Mike McGear. So a couple of retirements, unfortunately. LaRue, Bernardi, Bluchnote. Unfortunately, a couple of drivers not making it here tonight. Nixon, Leclerc, Martin, Watt, Bernard Barkhuizen. But retirements coming in for Gerry Duplessis and Gerard van der Vente during the course of their race as well. Chris Sills trying to make his way past. He gets past Jody Cinnamon and sees the likes of Andre just up ahead of him. Andre, unfortunately, getting that drive-through penalty earlier on has cost him the race. He's into the top 5, but was fighting out for third place. He's going to have to chase down Bego Krobler 31 seconds up the road. Dion Karp running in third place. Unfortunately, not within close range to Pistorius and the likes of Oosthuizen as they continue on their drive. Yellow flags being waved as cars starting to make their way off circuit due to tire degradation, drivers starting to get tired, problems starting to come in. But big problem is going to be talking about Brandon Kruger and Kleinans, now 3 seconds apart with 9 minutes to go, Cam.
Yeah, it's something I'm keeping on looking here on our screens here, Steven. That gap goes up and then tumbles down as soon as it looks like it goes into a hard braking zone. It fluctuates up and down in 8 minutes. That gap can be reduced to nothing. As we take a look at Bego Krobler, Dion Cup might have had a bit of a spin there. He was 8 seconds ahead of Krobler, and right now he's 0.2 behind him, 0.1, and dropping lower and lower, getting into that slipstream, diving down on the inside, hoping to cover off a move is Dion Cup. It's gone from bad to worse after his pit stop, covering that inside. Watch out there, keep a bit of a fair distance. Those mirrors on those cars are quite expensive. and just holds off that inside line, but that does mean Bego Grobler has the inside line for the next corner, and then he switches again to Dion Cup having the inside line for the next corner, but keeps it ahead is the Ferrari of Cup there, and just inking it out there, gone from bad to worse. Those tires screaming a lot more ever since coming out of this pits, going through a full heat cycle, cooling down a little bit, and then firing up again with this spin.
Dion Cup, usual way to try and move opponents offline. A little bit of door banging coming into play. However, not going to work out in their favor, as Bego Grobler was expecting a hypercar to go up on his inside. A bit of clever thinking coming in from Jaco Kutzer in that 51, not wanting to make the pass happen there and then. He waited for his opportunity to get on by. A little bit of communication comes into play when you're in GT3 and hypercars. You're going to have to just keep your racing line and hope that drivers think a little bit more clearly on their passes. But Bego Grobler hunting down third place. This is his way back onto the podium. 7 minutes and 12 seconds to go. Bego Grobler needs to try and figure out how to get this pass working out in his favor, as Dion Cup losing out that bit of time. Kruger and Kleinans also gap closing between them. We're in for a fight for third and fourth place in the GT3 on the closing stage of this race, and we're in for a very close race heading into our hypercars of nearly into a second between the two cars. 1.4 between Brandon Kruger and Kleinans as they continue their drive through. Crystals putting in yet another lap here, slots in between and forces Bego Grobler to actually come off the gas a little bit there as he tried to get in the slipstream of Dion Cup.
Yeah, a bit of a cheeky move there from Souls. They're saying, listen, I'm here, and getting in between this fight for third and fourth, as we see Vietia Buerta into the pits and dropping down the order. One of the Aston Martins getting some work done on the car, might have sustained some damage from earlier contact and now affecting his race pace. But a look back, a sub 1 second gap almost between Kruger and Kleinans. There we go, over that mini sector, a sub 1 second. That Ferrari is definitely striking. It's not traffic affecting the likes of Kruger, it is something mechanical within that car. He's got clear track in front of him, the Lexus in the background, but that would have not made that big of an impact. Kleinans sees the car in front of him, he smells the blood in the water, and he's hunting down Brandon Kruger, already below 0.9. What has gone wrong with the Omnis Gaming car? 0.7, not getting the drive out of the corners. Is that a factory Ferrari compared to the customer one, meaning that something is definitely not all green light going within that Italian car?
We checking. That's all that's going to be coming through the radio. As we do see Brandon Kruger get right into the back of one of our GT3s. That is not ideal, as now Kleinans has got an open shot to go for the inside line, as they do try and get past the likes of JD Kildenace, and Kleinans really throwing caution to the wind. They got to get behind this battle ahead of Dion Cup and Bego Grobler, who see Kleinans come on. Oh, Dion Cup nearly into the side of Kruger, and here comes Kleinans getting the pass on Bego Grobler, who eyes out the outside of Dion Cup. Dion got tunnel vision again and nearly costing Brandon Kruger a big run, but now Bego's got the inside line. He's gonna defend. Dion Cup trying to force him to the inside, as we do see the likes of JD Kildenace diving into the pit lane, and it's gonna be a big sweep for likes of Dion Cup. Can he make it work? Oh, so tight as Bego forces him out wide. And that is a beautiful pass with contact, unfortunately. Contact. Bego Grobler and Dion Cup. Dion waiting for Bego to get going as Bego tries to get himself up and going. Dion Cup waits out like a gentleman, but that really tells a story. And we've also got Andre trying to fight it out with Jody Vietia Buerta coming out of pit lane now. We'll see these two fighting in his rearview mirrors as we got Andre battling to hold on to that top 5. Jody right on the back of him. Will be seeing an opportunity starting to brew. And unfortunately, our Chechen now needing to figure out what can he do to try and break away from the Aston Martin train, as there's, well, between that little train there, one of them is an imposter. And I think it's all blue.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Stephen. But some great sportsmanship shown there by the likes of Dion Cup, waiting for his opponent, and rather instead of taking the position back immediately, just slotting him behind and hoping to make a move there. But it looks like the gap, switching back over to our hyperclass, Kleinhans has slowly but surely clawed back the gap with those the GT3's cars, getting a bit of a mix in between the two of them, making a gap bigger there over 1 second. But Jan Kleinhans 13% energy and Crystals on 10. This is enough to see them to the very end of this race. It is a bit longer compared to last week, but take a look at this gap again from 0.6 0.4 into the braking zone, hard on the brakes, going to be just above 4 tenths, and now it's going to just grow a bit more as the cars switch direction, but again dips into sub 3 as it looks like Kleinhans just able to get better drive up the corner, caught up to the likes of the Raging Bull, not the Prancing Horse, and Pretorius lets both cars through there. Not what Kruger would have wanted, hoping that Pretorius might have thrown a spanner into the works a bit there. As it does, the gap spikes up again, drops down again. BMW into the fray of things there, puts them offline. Kleinhans goes onto the inside, goes for the undercut there, hoping to get a better drive, not able to make a stick here. But again, 0.3, this gap fluctuating up and down with 2 minutes to go within the race. Kleinhans, if you want to make a move now, better take your shot, pick it, and hope it sticks.
Well, it's going to be a hard fight as Beggar Krobler and Dion Karp also in their own battle for third place in the GT3s. We've got fights all the way through the field. We keep an eye on our hypercar battle as Brandon Kruger has got a damaged engine, trying to keep the likes of Johan Kleinhans at bay, is doing everything he can, throwing caution to the wind, really forcing his way by, and Kleinhans starting to gain more and more time at this point, has to pull the trigger relatively soon to make it work out in his favor, as Brandon Kruger, now down the main straight they go, in tow. Kleinhans falls a little bit short of that slipstream, will be waiting for his opportunity to come on by. Carl Oosthuizen and Pretorius in the background, they going and continuing to hold first and second of the GT3s, but it is still going to be a monumental battle for the likes of Kleinhans and Brandon Kruger as they now do see a little bit further up the road Chris Heineke and Mouton to deal with a bit of company. Mouton moves out of the way in the BMW. Chris Heineke in the Porsche going and keeps it wide to allow Kruger to come through relatively easy, and Kleinhans going and also utilizing that gap. Mouton goes on the attack of Chris Heineke thanks to that little pass, and it has turned that Mouton ahead of Chris Heineke. Quick flash of the lights, as I don't think Chris had an easy one there. I think there was a little bit of contact between the two. Contact between Jody and Macheka, who go and continue on their fight. Jody getting ahead into the top 5. Andre down into 6th place. Mouton and Heineke.
Kleinhans penalty. Sorry, Stephen. Kleinhans has gotten a drive-through penalty for exceeding track limits, and unfortunately now, meaning he has to either serve it now, as this will be the penultimate lap, or will face a time penalty to be added on at the end of this race.
And that has put to bed that, as our leaders in our GT3s coming through, Carl and Essian fighting it out. Stills will take the win in the hypercar class. Kruger will hold on to 2nd. Kleinhans will finish up in 3rd. But now 1st and 2nd of the GT3s are all over one another. This is going to be a race down to the line. Who's got the power to make it work? It is going to be a last-minute dash for Pretorius to get past Oosthuizen, fighting it out for the top spot. Has the Lamborghini got the legs on the BMW? Oosthuizen dives to center, holds it, tries to battle his way through, flat on the gas. It's going to be a chase down to the wire. Oosthuizen just keeping ahead. Pretorius in the tow, looks to try and get by as they come across the line. It's Carl Oosthuizen ahead of Pretorius right at the very end. 0.1 of a second between the two of them. Beggar Krobler will hold on to 3rd ahead of Dion Karp by the looks of it, but it's Crystals, Kruger, Kleinhans, Verveers and Kutzer rounding out our top 5 of the hypercars. Beggar Krobler will be happy to hold on to 3rd place after what a stellar run between himself and Dion Karp. They did have a bit of a brawl early on in the race. They put it to bed And it was a beautiful run for both drivers as they come across the line. Jody Cinnamon finishes out in the top 5, and this is his first top 5. And once again, getting into a stellar run, only just getting ahead of Macheka. And it does look like Fiatia Buerta doing exactly the same. He's a lap down, however, but will follow the fellow Aston Martins through to the end. What a race, Cam. What an incredible race.
Absolutely battles all the way up until the very end in both classes, not just the one. An unfortunate heartbreak for Kleinans, knowing that the likes of Kruger is struggling and trying to get as much out of the car and make a move, but just exploring a bit too much of the off-circuit leading, of the off-track side leading to that penalty, which unfortunately is heartbreaking, but a bit of a sigh of relief for the Omnis Gaming Hyperclass car there. And then also Esteban Pretorius. Let's talk about that. A guy or a driver who is new relatively to the sim and has gone back to back, as I see my bit of camera has gone a bit nuts on this side, but has gone and absolutely, one could say, made his name known for this car, for this race, going back-to-back podiums, second places at both Spa-Francorchamps and here at Qatar. As you know what, there we go. Finally, I think something on my side might have gone a bit weird regarding the camera there. Apologies from my side to the production team, but really some great racing out there, Stephen, and heart-in-mouth moments all the way until the very end.
No, absolutely incredible stuff. And I've got to say, some incredibly close racing. Well done to Brandon Kruger. Engine damage on the car. Fights his way through to the very end and ensured that he held on second place. Kleinans threw caution to the wind to try and get the pass done. However, a little too much giving and a little too less in terms of trying to keep within lines. And that's one thing. The stewards will watch you start to finish of the race. And if you cross those lines, well, it has been a hurt one. And we've actually seen the most amount of drive-through penalties in this race out of the 2 seasons we've been running the RaceFace.Pro LMU. But we got to talk about the drag races through to the end. Likes of Pretorius and Oosthuizen, very close between the two, right to the wire. Oosthuizen kept it down to center to ensure that the pass will work out in his favor. However, if there was one step wrong, well, it was going to be an entirely different workout. And it does bring, once again, I do think Pretorius has finally broken the camel's back and has moved himself a little bit further up and sorted out some of the mechanical issues. Unfortunately, quite a few of our entrants weren't able to get down to the end of the race due to a variety of problems as well. But that is racing. That's how it works out. And it's phenomenal to see drivers still putting in the great effort they need to continue to fight it out here at round 4 of the RaceFace.Pro LMU Championship Season 2, and next week it will be our Season 5. But Cam, while we got that going on, we do have our drivers waiting to come and have a chat to us in the commentary box and give us a bit of an insight from their part of how on earth this race went. Because, well, it was exciting start to finish, and also a dominating win yet again coming in from Chris Stills.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. And going to start bringing some of our drivers to podium finish here. First will be our third place for our GT3s, the likes of Bego Grobler. Bego, welcome to the LMU podium. But I believe on the new side for you, you've grown quite used to the ACC side. A bit of a shocker one. You snuck up on us there and really showed that the Mercedes still has got what it takes, even though it's one of the older spec cars out there on the circuit. How was tonight's race for you there?
Oh, how's it, guys? Yeah, odd to be in the LMU podium, but happy. Yeah, to be honest, the Mercedes, I didn't enjoy it around here. It's just so understeery compared to the other cars. You see the lines and the apex speed that the Ferrari and the Lamborghini can take, even the BMW, and you just wonder how when you're stuffing the Merc. So it was tough, but yeah, I got lucky. I don't know what happened with Dion, but he lost, I don't know, 8 or 9 seconds there towards the end, and then dropped back towards me, and then we were fighting. So I took all new left side tires. I don't think he took any, so that helped a bit through the fast right hand corners. But yeah, it was still hard to pass the Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there, the battle that was shared between yourself and Dion Cup, unfortunately coming down to a bit of a collision there, but some good sportsmanship still being shown there from Dion, saying, listen, I'm not going to take this from you. Let's continue to the race to the very end and see and fight and see who gets the best out of there by leading you in front, which is quite nice. But you also mentioned the tyres. It's something that we mentioned at the beginning of it. Tyre degradation around Qatar is quite a monster when it comes to this track. It's not fair or well nice on the tyres, and you have to always look after your driving style in order to preserve them as long as possible.
Yeah, especially the lefts. The front left really takes a beating. Yeah, and then when myself and Dion had that contact at the end, he waited. So that was I haven't checked the replay, so I'm not even sure what happened. But I think he probably had a better view, so him waiting, yeah, is nice. I appreciate that. But that spin kind of cooked the rears. So from there, it was very sketchy through the last sector, through the 3 fast right-hand corners. I was like counted on like 25, 30% or 30 degrees counter steer every time through those 3 corners. So it was tough, but just luckily on the exit of the last corner, starting the last lap, he I think had a bit of a tank slapper, and that gave me the room I needed.
Well, some great words there at the very end there towards you, and some great respect shown between you two there. But Vega, I'm going to give you the floor and also the mic. Any words you want to give to someone or any shout out there, the floor is yours, and you can say anything on your heart.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to you guys for doing the stream and putting on a great show as always. And then thanks to the LMU organizers for running this league. And thanks to everybody that's entered the league and that keeps racing every week. It's really making a success of this LMU league, and it's great to see. And then, yeah, just everybody that's listening, just let's get some more hypercars on the grid. So if you guys are keen on driving a hypercar, jump in and come join the league. And then obviously to everybody that joins the stream every week and watches and comments and supports, just a huge shout out to you guys. Without you, there's a lot of things that wouldn't be possible. And then lastly, just huge shout out to the sponsors.
Well, some kind words going out there and a bit of a challenge for our viewers, telling them if you enjoy what you're seeing, come join us down here at RaceFace and fill out the hyperclass car, as well as maybe even expand into our LMP2 class. But Bega, I'm going to let you go and go celebrate with your team on a hard-fought podium there here at Lusail Circuit here in Qatar.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to bring in the car and the driver that kind of seems to be on an upwards trend here and just gets a bit sidestepped regarding that podium, the overall victory, and that is the like of Esteban Pretorius. That lonesome Lamborghini seems to be a pest with regards to that BMW of Oosthuizen and Blighnout. Esteban, welcome back again to the commentary box.
Yeah, glad to be back again so soon. Yeah, it was a very tough race. I mean, you guys saw the end there with Oosthuizen, and it was side by side over the finish line.
Yeah, I think the gap between you two, was about sub 1 second there. I mean, really a bit of a drag there till the very end. I mean, super close. Got the pole, and then unfortunately lost it.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit, I don't know, the start of the race was a bit rough. I need to watch it over again to see what happened. I feel everyone was a bit over-eager on cool tires and pushed, I don't know who it was, someone pushed me wide coming out of like turn 4 and forced me onto the gravel. Unfortunately lost a couple positions there. But yeah, that completely changed up my strategy for the race. I went into fuel saving mode and it almost worked out in the end.
You did mention now the change of strategy at the very end. It's something that myself and Stephen has asked ourselves is the tires. You seem to have had a bit of a longer stop compared to the likes of Oosthuizen. Was that because only of fuel, or was that also due to the fact that you might have changed some of your tires in order to get a bit of a better pace at the very end? I
expected Oosthuizen to not change tires. I don't know. I just thought he probably won't. And he seemed to be playing the long game. So at the end of the first stint, I decided to put the foot down, close that gap up, and then try to go for the undercut by changing tires as well. I took 4 new tires. Unfortunately, that allowed Dion in the Ferrari to overtake me because he did not change tires. And that was the point in the race that lost me the victory, was getting caught behind Dion Cup, where he was on warm tires, I was on cool tires, and then once mine heated up, I had the tire advantage and just lost a lot of time behind him, unfortunately, and then was unable to catch Westays in the end.
Well, it does seem like the newer, fresher tires seems to have been the strategy to go to, with the bottom 2 steps of the podium taken up by drivers who have changed their tires. But Esteban, I'm going to give you the floor. You know the drill, the mic's yours. Give a shout out to anybody that you have out there, as well as if you want to throw a bit of a challenge down to anybody out there in the virtual grandstands or yourselves at the RaceFace.Pro LMU Discord.
I just want to say thanks to all the friends and family that watched. I know there was a couple of them watching. And congrats to Kyle, who ended up getting the victory. He had very nice pace there in the end on all tires. I was barely able to keep up, even though I had new tires. So congrats to him on taking another victory. And that's about that. We'll see what happens next week. Hopefully I will be back talking to you guys.
Well, thanks, Esteban, for joining us in the comms. I'm going to let you go and go celebrate with the team there, as well as family members, on a well-fought second place, and hopefully soon that victory will come your way.
Thank you very much.
And now I'm going to bring in Carl Oosthuizen, our LMGT3 champion, well, not champion, victor for this race here. Carl, you seem to like getting involved in those last-minute scraps there until the very, very end. Take us through this race and how you experienced it out there.
The race was one of patience. I knew Esteban was going to take tyres. I just don't know how many. But when I thought track position was going to be everything, I didn't want to be in dirty air. So I just took the front left because it was getting absolutely demolished from the track. And Esteban took all 4, and he was chopping me down at a rate of knots in the last 10 laps. It was like 1.2 seconds every single lap. And when you go into every corner and your eye just flicks to the top left and you see the delta coming down, you got to lock in. And luckily I came away with it. It was so close at the line.
Well, it was definitely a close one to the very end there. I mean, a drag race until the end, sub 1/10 almost separating you two. It's Pretorius wrote it down to, unfortunately, getting stuck behind Dion Karp, who didn't change tires, and it cost him some time. I do believe that we might have had a closer fight even longer if the tires didn't have that much of an impact. But you both showed quite a phenomenal pace. Do you view Esteban as a bit of a challenger for the championship after taking 2 podiums?
Definitely. If Esteban didn't come out of the pits in P3, I feel he would have gotten past me very easily. I just didn't have the tyre or car beneath me to defend, and he was flying. He was by far the fastest guy out there tonight. It just didn't go his way. Going forward, him, Johan Blichnout, they're going to be very difficult to beat. And that's another shame, is that at the beginning of the race, I was right on Johan's rear, and I was looking forward to a nice 3-way fight, mix it up a bit, but I think he disconnected or something, and that's a shame. But going forward, I think we're halfway through the season now. That's, I think, 2 wins that Johan's lost to technicalities, and that's not ideal. I'll take it where I can get it, but going forward, it's going to be tough.
Yes, unfortunately, some technical issues did take out some of our drivers during today's race, and we hope to get it sorted. LMU still in that early teething phase there, but I'm going to give you the mic now to give a shout out or lay down a challenge for everybody out there. If you don't have a challenge, that's also fine, but the mic's yours and the floor's yours.
Just a shout out to Esteban. kept me honest throughout the whole race. I know in the first stint he was saving tyres, and then when he started showing his true pace when he boxed, I was like, okay, he's flying, and it's going to be tough after our pit stop to keep him behind. I got a little bit lucky with traffic with him and traffic in general, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to the rest of the season. I didn't feel like the BM was the best at Qatar. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but for me it just didn't suit me. But we move on, and yeah, it's all to play for the last 4 rounds.
Well, some wise words being said there by Carl Usail there, our winner for our GT3 class here tonight. Carl, I'm going to let you go celebrate with your team there and enjoy the champagne once again as you stand on the top step of the podium.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Well, now we're bumping over to our hyperclass cars, the class that gave us a heart-to-mouth moment and something to watch for. And I'm going to bring in our third place of our hyperclass first, and that is Brandon. Oh wait, no, sorry, not Brandon. Sorry, Jan Kleinans. Apologies for that. Bit of a mix-up there. Jan Kleinans, welcome to the commentary box again. This time as our third place on the podium, instead of the usual second that you've gotten used to over the last 3 races. Walk us through this race there. I mean, a great battle to the very, very end there.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Look, it was a difficult race for sure. Unfortunately, made a mistake. 20 minutes in, I can't recall exactly where, but that ultimately cost me the second place. Honestly, overall happy. It's a very tricky track. It's scary with the GT3s. It's scary on tires, scary on fuel. It's just a very challenging race, and I'll tell you, I was sweating at the end of it. But overall fun and happy to be on the podium.
Well, you did mention the race or the fight that you had there with Brandon until the very, very end, and unfortunately the battle had to be cancelled there with a penalty that was awarded towards you, meaning that you dropped some time there. But were you aware that Brandon might have been carrying a bit of mechanical issue? Our spotters and viewers around the track notified that they saw a bit of a puff of smoke coming from that car at the final corner halfway into the race.
Yeah, look, it was full send for me. At a point, I didn't care too much about the warnings. I was just pushing. I knew I had a gap to the back, so even if it happened, it happened. But I was gonna go down dying at least. Look, we all saw the smoke. We noticed it. I think he probably didn't have his oil. The air slots, open enough, which can be scary. If he went too far, it would have resulted in an engine failure. But definitely aware of it, and it definitely pushed me to push a bit harder.
Well, you did mention there, unfortunately, throwing caution to the wind, trying to really maximize the results out of this race. Unfortunately, wasn't enough and ended up with a slap on the wrist from the stewards there. But it does bode well still for your championship standings as well as for the Delta negative standings here. But I'm going to give you the floor now and for any words that you want to speak that are on your heart and want to put out there into the RaceFace.Pro virtual world out there.
Like always, thanks to you guys. Thanks for all the sponsors and the team. Good job to Chris, who's yet again shown a bit of dominance. And thank you to all the GT3s who made it easy to get by. Other than that, I'll thank you for the race.
Well, some nice words there from the third place finisher from Delta Negative, Jan Kleinans. I'm going to let you go and celebrate with your teammates as well as the loved ones there supporting you in the virtual grandstands. But Delta Negative's Jan Kleinans there, well done on the third place in the race tonight.
It's just...
And now I'm going to bring in Brandon Kruger, the one that I brought in earlier, got hooked up onto the mic earlier and unfortunately got a bit of mix up there. But Brandon, welcome to the commentary box, this time as a second place in our round 4 here at Qatar. Take us through tonight's race and just how did you find it?
Oh, well, it was quite fun. Lusail is quite a nice track to lap with the hypers. Race conditions a little bit trickier, a little bit more slightly more miserable because you have to lap the GT3s. But other than that, it's a great race. It was a nice, clean race as well. Quali didn't pan out as well as I'd like it. Just kept on making mistakes going wide. But race pace was fine. Had a little bit of a dance with Jan. And it all turned out all right.
Well, you said all turned out all right. I don't know. Now, this is something that we've been speculating in the comments box is, were you the team aware that you were carrying a bit of a mechanical engine issue there with at the halfway into this race? We saw a bit of smoke coming out of the gearbox there, or the exhaust there as you exited the final corner on one of the laps. Was this something that you picked up, or was it just not noticed from your side?
Yeah, so post-race, people informed me that my car was smoking. So I didn't realize that it had been smoking. All I knew is that my oil temperature gauge was red, and it kept on showing like 130, 131. I'd thrown the race setup on, so I assumed that the oil cover or the oil cooler cover would actually be, open or whatnot. So I guess whatever setup I used didn't account for the race or whatever, and that's what pushed my oil temperatures up, unfortunately. There was slight lack of performance on the straights. What I realized when I was trailing Jan, that he'll pull me a little bit. But yeah, other than that, wasn't too bad.
Either a bit of duct tape being left onto the duct there, on the radiator there, or just something not working out there, but you're still able to manage to keep it in second there. Unfortunately, a penalty getting also a bit between yourself and Jan Kleiners there, leading him to drop a bit back. But you put on quite a phenomenal performance there. Not the usual start we see from the Omnis Gaming side, the crew there, with the phenomenal attack directly from the start. Was there something that you worked on, or was it just unfortunately a bad start tonight?
No, it was an okay start. Keeping it clean was the main focus. Just not being too aggressive. It's an 80-minute race, and obviously before my little spin, I could at least keep on to the bind of Jan and Chris. So that wasn't too bad. A little bit of a heartbreak for Yaku. He got a drive-through on race start. I don't know, maybe he released the pit button a little bit too early. But yeah, that was just so unfortunate because he had mega pace. So it would have probably been either 2-3 or 2-4 right there. So yeah, slight unfortunate happenings there, but overall, I would say we both had strong races when everything did go right.
Well, a good race from all there, unfortunately, with some penalties being handed, but as the starting procedure was a bit breached. But Brandon, I'm going to give you the floor, and as well as the mic for any words that you might want to say.
Thank you, Cameron. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for watching. It was a pleasure racing tonight, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.
Kind words being spoken there by Brandon Kruger there. But now, finally, I'm going to bring in our our Hyperclass car winner, Chris Stalls, who seems to be making a bit of a massive habit of this, of just running away with the races. Chris, welcome again as the winner of the Hyperclass car here into the podium, into the commentary box.
Thanks, Cameron. I wouldn't say running away. It's a lot of hard work, but yeah, I'm happy to get the win.
Always as humble as ever is Chris Stalls here, but I mean, you definitely ran away almost with the race tonight. I mean, 20-second gap to your, almost a 20-second gap to your closest competitor in the same class. It's something that you might have just figured out there, but it looks like at the race start, which was your weakest point of the race normally within the Peugeot, just being a bit slow off of the start, it seems to be your strongest tonight, was just able to keep that lead, and at one point in the second lap, already having a 2-second gap towards your closest competitor.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with the start. I've raced here once before in a 6 hour, and I also really had a good start then. So I don't know, maybe something about the track. I'm not sure. Maybe just coincidence, but yeah, good start. Managed to keep the lead into the first corner. It was a little bit scary at one point because I was running a bit wide and had my teammates on the outside, so it was a little bit scary. But yeah, after those first two corners, then being able to just control from there. I knew I had to keep the lead because it's very difficult to pass, so especially with the Peugeot. So yeah, it was a good start, and from there it got a bit scary when we had the first round of traffic with Brandon getting close. Then I knew I had to push again, and yeah, just try to manage the gap as much as possible.
Well, I did mention that first round of traffic. It was quite nerve-wracking for us here in the comments box, looking at that gap going from quite a large one to being less than half a second between the top three. It was hard-mouth moments for everybody watching also. But from then on, it seems to just you gain a lot more confidence just slicing through the traffic and just making it through all those back markers. It seems to be just a knack of you for, at the start, you give everybody a heart attack, and at the end, you just slice them through like a hot knife through butter almost.
Yeah, I think it's about like just sussing everyone out, finding the spots that work on the track. This is a very tricky track to do your overtaking of the traffic because you're so much faster. There's just such a big downforce gap. So some of these corners you just arrive so much quicker, and I don't think they always expect you because they'll look in the mirror, there'll be nothing, and 2 seconds later there's a hypercar right on them. So it's definitely a difficult thing for both parties. So congrats to the GT3s as well. I don't think there were any major incidents. So yeah.
Well, there was a bit of rubbing in racing, but also some very nice gentleman racing between all the GT3s out there, but also between all the hyperclass. But Chris, I'm going to give you the mic. The floor is yours. You know the drill. Anything you want to say is yours. Just keep it always friendly for anybody out there.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, no, I'm just I'm happy to be here again. 4 in a row is really nice. So yeah, thanks. Thanks to all the people behind the scenes make this possible, and you guys, and the sponsors for the awesome trophies that they gave for the previous season, and hopefully this season as well. I'm aware that they are doing trophies this season, so I'm sure they're going to be sick. So yeah, no. Please, guys, come race hypercars. We don't want to see the category die, and yeah, it'd be nice to have some more people come race and try and win some of these trophies that our sponsors are providing. So yeah, thanks to SPR and Rhino Utility and everyone watching, my girlfriend and my dad and my mom. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome, nice words there from Chris Stoltz. But I'm going to let you go and celebrate. And once again, congratulations on that victory. 4th one in a row for season 2 at LMU.
Thanks.
Well, Steve, that does bring us to the very end of this broadcast, and also a bit of a dive from the hot, humid air that we have here at Qatar as we head over now to San Marino, to the Emilia-Romagna district at the little race circuit called Imola. A very beautiful circuit that has a lot of strategy bound to it, but also a very iconic and historic circuit.
Oh, that is for sure. And it's a circuit that I used to hate, but now starting to love a little bit in older cars, not in the newer stuff. But that being said, we're going to see the championship starting to heat up in the GT3 side of things. Also, how close the hypercar for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are going to be. So this is all different factors coming into play as there's not many rounds left. We're moving on to round 5 out of 8 rounds, and that means that it's all on the cards. Remember, they do have a single drop round that can be utilized during the course of the championship to try and help them out as well. So that's going to be an extra factor to throw in at the end of the season. And once again, we're going to see who's going to hold that top spot. Is it going to come down to mechanical problems as we saw tonight, where you bought a setup but didn't quite have it set for the conditions of tonight's servers? Or is it going to come down to mechanical problems coming in play? Is it going to come down to loss of talent? Or is it going to be the drivers making those crucial errors into the pit stops or outright pace? I mean, I'm really looking forward to the race. I'm looking forward to next week, and I'm looking forward to plenty of action coming up this week and next week. So, massive thank you to our sponsors, Team SBR, along with Rhino Utility, Virtual Motorheads, Simulator Cave, and EG Evolve being part of our amazing show and ensuring that we can keep moving forward. Remember to keep an eye out on the specials for our social media, likes of EG Evolve and Simulator Cave, all running some great specials out there. Rhino Utility sorting out all your alternative electricity needs as well. But that also being said, tomorrow night we've got our Assetto Corsa Competizione that's going to be having a bit of fun out on the circuit. Both Pro-Am and Gold and Silver to be streamed, and they will be out there putting on a phenomenal show. Next week, however, on Tuesday, last of our week 13-ish that we have here at RaceFace.Pro, we're going to have a little bit of fun in the single-seaters. I will be in the Lotus 79. Well, he will be in F4.
I prefer modern compared to old.
not as good as the older cars, but plenty of racing. So do head over to SimGrid, look up RaceFace.Pro, and join in the fun. Head down to the description for our Discord and join in with all the conversation. Massive shout out to those that are joining our Make a Coffee or Buy Me a Coffee. That does help to keeping the lights on here at RaceFace.Pro. Massive shout out to our admins, our stewards, our drivers and teams, and most importantly, you, our fans, joining in the virtual grandstand to keep the action going. And we look forward to seeing you coming and joining us here at Imola. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And a massive shout out to all the way from the desert. We now can put him back in the sand. Cameron de Bastos on a phenomenal run. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, like always, from the THT Productions, from Cameron de Bastos and myself, Stephen Koenig, we'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.